I didn't even know that came with a siren. No, hold on a second. All right, guys. Good evening. Hey, we got a lot of good stuff to go over tonight. Sorry about that. I didn't have. I'm on a different computer right now. As you know, I had some computer troubles with the other one, so I have a new laptop. But I haven't transferred that countdown timer we had, so I just grabbed one quick off of YouTube, and I had no idea until we both got to at the end there that came with a siren too. That's the siren that the first responders didn't use when they arrived at 34 Fairview. All right, so a lot of the interesting things I want to go over tonight. I do want to go over the Ellen Greenberg case, and this for me is a chance for us to kind of outline an approach that I take to cases, and I think many of you guys do too. And I'm going to go up. So let's hold off on this and I'll come back to it. I don't want to draw conclusions about the case because I don't know much about it, but I found a really good article that outlines kind of the pros and cons here. It's a woman that was that died in 2011 in Philadelphia, and it was ruled a suicide. But her family and a lot of other people believe it was a homicide. I first became aware of this case because I saw a post from our friend Jen Coffindaffer. So I think she seems to believe that Ellen was murdered based on the post that I saw, but I'm not sure. So maybe once we get caught up on this, maybe we can do a show with Jen and talk to her. At this point, it'd be too early because she knows about the case and we don't know much about it. But there's also one of the things that I really like when I get into a case is I want to go over the documents. And so I was able to find a website for this, Gavin something his name, but I'll give you guys a link to it after, but it has every document related to this case. So as we go over it, for those of you that are interested in looking into it with me, we can have access to all of the court documents. And that's important because the stuff that's out there a lot of times on Reddit or on YouTube or on Facebook is unreliable. So you really want to go by the documents as much as you can. Let me just check in, make sure the mic sounds good. Not seeing any complaints there. All right, good. Thanks. So there's a few things I want to go over. Let me pull up. I want to go over El Hefe. Some interesting stuff going on with El Hefe. And a hilarious video from the young Jelly there. Okay, hoping the mic is back. I bumped into it. Just checking for comments to make sure. Okay, all right. So I also, Brandy Churchwell is going to be, I think, on Turtle Boy tonight, right? Brandy Churchwell, the 13th juror. So I posted on this on Twitter today. So I have had a little bit of a communication experience with Brandy going back. Now, first of all, somebody had sent me earlier in the week or last week, I forget when, some documents that I'm not going to show or talk about, but they were, if true, they would be embarrassing to Brandy Churchwell. But my policy on this stuff is that there's so much, and the person who sent this to me, I am not in any way indicating that she was taking part in that. So please don't take this the wrong way. I just think that it's so easy to create fake documents and then have them spread around on social media by people that don't like you or that disagree with you on a case, that to me, I don't participate. I don't pass them along to anybody else. So if it comes to me, I don't pass it along. It's too easy to fake these things. And the other thing is I really don't generally like to get into the dirt aspect of things. I don't like it. It seems to. Is the mic still off? All right, hold on a second. All right. Okay, it should be back now. I bumped the mic. what when I bumped the mic and then I entered it back in, I guess it switched to a different mic, so it should be okay now. I'm looking at the chat to see. Sounds good. Okay. All right. Good. Hey, it wouldn't be me if we didn't have some unplanned technical difficulties. That's all part of the show. No, it's very difficult when you're managing it yourself, and this equipment is very sensitive. You touch it the wrong way, and boom. So, anyways, what I was talking about. I'm not sure when the mic cut out, but Brandy Churchwell, I think she's going on Turtle Boy tonight, and so I posted on this earlier today. So somebody had sent me these documents. I don't know, last week or the week before, that if true would be embarrassing to her, but have no relevance to the Karen Reed case or really any of her YouTube work. So for two reasons, I don't pass this kind of stuff along. I don't mention it. I don't talk about it with you guys on the show, and I don't pass it on to anybody else. The first is that it's too easy to fake this stuff. And in this world of social media wars, there's always someone that wants to spread fake stuff about you. Now, I don't know if this material about Brandy is fake or real. I have no idea, but I give it the benefit of the doubt that it's fake. And since it has nothing to do with the case or any of her work, it's just trying to smear somebody with dirt. I don't spread it. I don't get into that kind of dirt. It's just never interested me. To me, it's almost. I think this. Hopefully, my mic is still good. Just getting another message. All right. To me, if you have the stronger argument in the arena of ideas, the arena of arguments, then you don't need to sink the dirt. Sinking the dirt is a very turtle crowd kind of thing to do. So I just free Karen Reed kind of crowd thing to do. It's if you have the stronger argument, you don't need to do it. So I like to, and to me, if I don't have the strong argument, then I need to fix my argument. So it serves kind of no purpose to me. However, if she's going to fix this by going on Aidan Kearney's show, I mean, Aidan Kearney, I love watching mafia history, mafia movies, especially New York City, La Cosa Nostra, that kind of stuff. I watch podcasts on it. It's just an interesting thing for me. And of course, Lucky Luciano was the guy that famously brought organized to organized crime, or made it into a more systemic business. That's what Lucky Luciano was in the 20s and 30s to the mafia. He made it organized. He made it a big business. That's what Turtle Boy is to the social media smear. He didn't invent social media smearing. It's been around forever, and it's a natural part of human behavior. However, he's made it organized through people like Jen Altman and many others like Haley Albrecht or whatever her name is. These people are systematic about the way they try to approach this. They go out, if anybody disagrees with them, they go digging for dirt. And if they can't find dirt, they'll just make stuff up. It's just what they do. And for people in that mob to not recognize it is foolish. I mean, even if you think that Karen Reed is innocent, and Turtle Boy, if you believe that he's broken stories that you think have a value, okay. But you shouldn't be in denial about what they do. They try to silence people through social media. This is why it's powerful, and this is why many lawyers in this state did not want to get involved with any of these cases. It's just a fact. So for Brandy Churchwell, if she's going to go on that channel to try to complain about being smeared in social media, I don't feel any sympathy for her. Now, I did have a little bit of a history with Brandy, not much, but several months back, somebody from the anti-Karen Reed side sent me a message saying, can you reach out to Brandy? And because her perception was that Brandy was, though misguided on this case, was perhaps not a bad person, and perhaps somebody that was trying to get to the truth. And that maybe if it was just a matter of reaching out to someone like that and giving him a broader look at the evidence, then maybe she might change her mind, right? And it seemed like a reasonable shot. And I guess Brandy, like me, has had some serious health issues. And this person's perception of Brandy was that this is someone that might be sympathetic to some of this stuff. And it really, at heart, is not a bad person. I said, okay, sure. I didn't really watch her. I was aware of her presence, but I'd never really watched her show. I knew she was getting kind of big in terms of getting picked up by some of the national shows and stuff like that. She looks respectable. My perception is kind of a, nicer, softer tone, but 100% following along with the conspiracy theory. But so I reached out to her through Twitter and nicely. And I said, if you'd like to have a civil discussion on this and go over some of the evidence that maybe you're not seeing, I'd be happy to come on your show, or you could come on my show, or we could just do it on the phone. If you're really interested in the truth, I can give you some of the evidence that you're missing. She wasn't interested in it. What she was interested in was trying to have civil discourse. So she appreciated me kind of reaching out in a civil way, but she rejected it. She basically, her position is let's sum up her position honestly. She wants to be able to grift on this in a civil way. All right. Now, we've gone over it many times what we mean by grifting. Grifting is when you're trying to capitalize on something for your own benefit, and you can't skip the and you have no interest in the truth. So if you're a legitimate reporter that's going out and covering something, let's say you're going to write a book on this case, but you value the truth above all, then there's no reason you shouldn't be paid for your work. So it's not grifting if somebody comes out and pursues the truth and tries to get to the story and is willing to publish the truth, whether it's the more popular thing or not. So to me, that's the difference. And so here you should have been able to look at this, say last year when all these channels were popping up. You should have been able to look at this and say, all right, even if you think there's enough odd things here that maybe Karen is innocent and it's worth pursuing, the conspiracy theory seems kind of unlikely, right? I mean, to me, that would be a reasonable position to say, okay, there's something interesting here, but we need to really ask a lot of questions, because is it really likely that 11 people inside the house are going to stay quiet? Is it really likely they're going to stay quiet after the feds are investigating? Is it likely that all the police and first responders and medical examiners and everybody involved is going to stay quiet on an elaborate conspiracy? Is it likely that the conspirators are going to put the victim still alive on their own lawn? All of those things should have made any honest person of common sense say, I don't know here. Okay, maybe there's something, but we really have to ask hard questions, because there might not be, And so to me, if you're not at least asking those questions, you're grifting. And to my knowledge, though I don't really watch her channel, but I've seen the Twitter posts and stuff like that until she blocked me, I never once saw her question any aspect of the conspiracy theory. You never see Turtle Boy question it. You never see the Glare question it. You never see LTL question it. You never see, obviously, Young Jelly question it. I mean, Melanie Little. None of these people ever question it. And to me, that just means you're not interested in the truth. You have no interest in the truth. If you're not at least saying, okay, does this all add up? If you're not asking, why was there no canine DNA? If you're not at least asking that, there's something wrong. You're not really interested in the truth, and you're just trying to exploit the situation. Now, if this is a UFO case, and we're going to get some interesting stuff on that in a little bit too. If this is something about UFOs, or if it's about who built the Egyptian pyramids, or who was Jack the Ripper, who killed Mr. and Mrs. Borden, things like that, that's harmless stuff. So it shouldn't matter what side you're on. It doesn't hurt anybody. But this is a case that is a current criminal case with a conspiracy theory that requires accusing innocent people who are presumed innocent, and of whom there is no evidence to suggest they participated in a murder. It requires you to try to destroy them. And if you're not aware, it's impossible. If you're someone like, say, Brandy, who's been covering this for over a year, it's impossible for her to not be aware of the daily destructive activity that's going on in the town of Canton, targeting these people. You can't not be aware of it. There's no way. So she is aware. So when she wants to take this position that I'm the nicer, softer person here, I'm the civilized person here, because she's not showing up at soccer games and antagonizing people and stirring up a ruckus, because she's talks a little more respectfully. But that's it. She's never once entertained trying to get somebody on the show to question any of that stuff. And when I offered her to do it with her, she had no interest, zero interest. So to me, she's just a softer, sweeter version of the glarer. She's not interested in the truth. She doesn't care about hurting innocent people. And now, to put the cherry on the top, she's going to go on the Lucky Luciano himself of organized social media smearing. She's going to go on his show today. So I'm sorry that I'm still not going to spread any of that dirt about Brandy, because she still gets the presumption of innocence from me, where that's made up. Maybe it will turn out to be true. I don't know. But I'm not going to spread it. But I also don't feel a lot of sympathy. I don't feel any sympathy for her, for whatever's going on here. Some of the vitriol that she's going to get in social media, she's brought on herself. Okay, so we got a lot to get to today. I'm going to play some clips from Monday, the shoot. Now, we had some interesting footage shot because we were right inside the crowd. I'm going to have to be careful and maybe stop and fast forward through some things, because I don't want to put anybody in harm's way. I don't want to put anybody out there that doesn't want to be out there. So we'll be very careful with it from that perspective. And I also want to go over the madness of what these guys are doing, of what they are. So the madness of El Hefe, but not just the madness of El Hefe. I think any one of us knows that he's now gone off the deep end crazy. But it's more than that. I'm going to play a piece of Young Jelly's video himself with Peter Murphy on it, because it's absolutely crazy. And I've also have some clips for you from El Hefe himself interviewing. Now he's removed this video because he's so embarrassed by it. Turtle Boy attacked him fiercely. I'm going to read some of the quotes here. And Turtle Boy basically said, "What are you doing? What are you doing, Sean?" So somebody got to Sean and finally said, "You need to take this down." He put up an insane video a few days ago where he interviewed Nick Fiorillo and Dan Duquette, the former general manager of the Red Sox. He actually has had these guys on a few months ago. That video is still up. So if you want to go see it, you can see a real tour of Crazyland. It was about 3 or 4 months ago. It's with Nick Fiorillo and Dan Duquette. But they really were extra crazy in this most recent one. I mean, they're basically saying that John O'Keefe uncovered a massive national drug dealing cartel conspiracy that was centered in Canton, and that's why he had to be killed. And the Alberts are part of this massive criminal enterprise. They must own an island somewhere like Epstein Island or something to have that kind of wealth that these people. It's madness. It's utter madness. George Soros is involved in it. George Soros ordered the death of John O'Keefe. I kid you not. This is Sean McDonough and his guest, and Sean nodding along. Oh yes, of course. And he's got posts on Twitter that back this stuff up too. This is the guy that is going on Howie Carr. This is the guy that's going in the New York Post. Okay, and nobody questions him. Everything he reports on the Karen Read case, everything ends up being a false claim. I had someone from very close to the inner core of Free Karen Read, somebody that was inner sanctum of the headquarters of the Free Karen Read movement, and now is maybe adjacent to that a little bit. They don't maybe not fully trust her yet, but she's still in there, and she's not. She still thinks maybe something happened in the house too, but she now has finally realized that Sean is crazy, and she's someone that talks to him directly. And so what finally did it for her, she said, was I'm not sure which time because he did this multiple times, but Sean's had texted her saying, finally, we can celebrate. Tomorrow is the day that the feds are going to arrest all the McAlberts and put a stop to this. Now, I don't know if this was the most recent time he said that, or when he said it on February 15th or April 15th or May 1st, or when he said it before Higgins testified, when he said it before the prosecution rested their case. He said it all those times. He's made that kind of doomsday prediction as though it was not a prediction like based on his analysis, but saying he had inside information. He's said it at least 10 times, and yet he's still getting more and more thousands of people to watch his insanity. I don't know if he's gone so far off the deep end that he believes it, but there are some people that if you've been following it for a few months, Sean, for a few months, if you have any brain at all, you realize this guy's insane and nothing he says comes true. So even if you tend to still think that Karen is innocent, you certainly know that everything that he says is false. That's just a fact. That's just an undeniable fact. We're not talking about a couple of small things either. We're talking about, I mean, there's other things besides the feds. He was saying that Paul O'Keefe was part of the conspiracy, and he took away John's Traverse that day so they took it to an auto body shop so they could work out, get rid of all the evidence of damage that was caused by Karen's SUV backing into it. Yes, he told me that on the phone, and then months later said that kind of thing publicly. So, yes, that is part of. Also, during the trial, when Mr. O'Keefe, so John's dad, who has some health problems of his own, when he wasn't there, Sean was like, he's flipped. Mr. O'Keefe is going over to the Karen Reed side. He'll be in court tomorrow. Again, that was false too. I mean, so everything he says ends up being false, but it's so false that at some point you wonder if it's actually doing, I believe at this point it's so off the reservation that it's doing damage to the Karen Reed movement. So I was going to play, fortunately we have some clips, but I was going to play you link to his channel from the show from a few nights ago, and I went up there today and it's been removed. So Sean obviously got the order from either Karen or Turtle Boy. Well, Turtle Boy had some negative comments on his Twitter. We'll look at that. But Karen probably put out the order, Sean, take that down. And Sean follows orders. So let's put up, let's go to Sean's Twitter feed, and then we can see some of this. So this was from July 9th. So this is something he's pinned there. So this is not the most recent, but he's talking about Scanlon breaking the story to Team Reed on February 3rd. No, we already have Scanlon's testimony. It was submitted in an official document. And Scanlon was trying to get some work, it looks like. He's a private investigator. He reached out in Facebook to Karen, and Karen said, go talk to my lawyer. So Scanlon went into the office, and he has testified that he knew nothing. He had no information. What information he eventually got all came from Yannetti and from the private investigator Mikowski. I think it's Paul Mikowski. That's it. And they tried to make it later seem that he was a whistleblower and had the information and he's the source. That was all just a trick by Yannetti and by Karen. So hopefully we'll see if he's taken down the Twitter posts. He had some crazy Twitter posts that I looked on earlier. Let's see, 7 hours. We'll see if he's taken him down. He might have, because he took it pretty hard from Turtle Boy. So July 27th. All right, let's see. This will be the last time I address this nonsense. Hopefully everyone understands the message. Last year, when Dan Duquette and Nick Fiorillo approached me, I had no platform. I was merely a moderator on Facebook page dedicated to John O'Keefe and Karen Reed, often embroiled in conflicts with other moderators. Most of you remember those days. And I will say at that time, he didn't, that's true. And he passed Nick along to me. And I knew who Nick was. And I said, I knew who Nick was from my days as a bar owner in Worcester. Nick is, I mean, I think he'd be an interesting character in a movie. He might, even to do a movie about Nick Fiorillo would be interesting. because he is the ultimate con man. He makes Turtle Boy look like a rank amateur. He is the ultimate, but he's been doing it so always his entire life. And interactions with organized crime. That's what I remember about him. With Diamond Duddy, who was the owner of several large car dealerships in Worcester, in the Worcester area, but also the chief officer of Commerce Bank. Now, Duddy died in his 90s several years ago, but Duddy himself had started out literally as a carnival barker back, like, I don't know, in the 30s or 40s or something like that. And he worked his way up to owning the car dealerships and then eventually taking over a bank. Well, I think he saw something of his younger self in Nick Fiorillo, so became enmeshed with him, but then it went bad. But Nick has left a trail of people he has swindled out of money his entire life, to the point where it's so bad here. Turtle Boy pointed out some of this stuff on Sean's page. And so that may have been the reason. But I warned Sean about this when he told me on the phone about Nick. And then I get a call a week later from Nick. So Sean gave him my number. In fact, well, it's a private conversation, so I'm not going to say anything. I mean, it was an entertaining conversation, but it was true. You know, he's an entertaining guy. He should probably do his own podcast, but it's all madness. It's literally, he's been conning people for so long with complete bullshit, and he just absorbs it's kind of like, you remember have you guys ever seen the movie, The Usual Suspects? Great movie, The Usual Suspects. And the Kevin Spacey character he's called Gimp or something like that. He's got a gimp that turns out he's got a bad leg, and it turns out to be fake. And he's telling these stories to the customs agent, the federal agent. Actually, I think about it, that's kind of like Sean. So he's telling the stories to this guy that was from that played the mafia guy in A Bronx Tale, another great movie. I can't remember that actor's name. Great actor. I love that guy. And he plays a federal officer who's chasing down Kaiser Sose. So even if you haven't seen this movie, you've heard of Kaiser Sose. And so trying to figure out so Virgil Kint or something like that. Maybe that was the name of the Kevin Spacey character. Virgil Kint, I think. And so he's spinning this yarn in there. But it comes out later, the agent only pieces it together when it's too late, that Virgil is taking little bits and stuff from around the room, flyers, a coffee coaster or whatever, just and incorporating it all into his story. Well, this is what Nick Fiorillo does. He does it better than Virgil, but no sane person would believe it. So he's now got Trump wrapped up in this, and grassy knolls, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was an entertaining story that Nick told me. And Nick didn't want to just come on the show. I will tell you, Nick offered me, he said, I want you to just dedicate your entire channel to my case here, and I'll put you on salary. Well, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, Nick, you know? And I would never have him on my show because he's peddling bullshit. I mean, there's no way around it. He's peddling complete bullshit, but Sean ate it all up. He eats, and I tried to warn him. And now Sean had him on a few months ago. And now I don't know how Dan Duquette, how he got fooled, how he's messed up with this. I don't know anything about Duke personally. I remember him as the Red Sox general manager, and it seemed like this kind of straight-laced kind of guy. But this is a conspiracy that nobody sane would believe it. Nobody. It's madness. And so we'll play some clips in a second. But so let's just get to what he's saying here. I had no platform. I was merely a moderator. All right, so I read that. They had no clear motive in reaching out to me other than wanting my opinion on what was happening to them. As I told them many times, I had no access to contacts connected to or from my former career. They sent volumes of documents and court filings that appeared to corroborate an elaborate scheme to hijack a successful and powerful information database network. During my 28 years as a federal investigator, I dealt with all sorts of people. I don't know. From my experience, I'm not finding too many cops. I don't know. This guy's no rocket scientist, trust me. I don't know what to say. I like him in some ways, but that's me talking to him all those times. But seeing what he's tried to get away with the last year and the innocent people he's attacked, the intellectual part of my head is like, no, what he's doing is evil. So, and stupid. Well, you name it. I dealt with them, but you have to put in the time and see through the smoke screens. He can't see through any smoke screens. Well, oh my God. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's unbelievable. There is no smoke screen that this guy can see through if it's what he wants to see. I immediately recognized that Nick Fiorillo was a different breed. He had to be handled in a very different manner. Nick is an intelligent guy. I will tell you that. I mean, he's just kind of gone off the deep edge with this stuff now. But on the other hand, Dan Duquette was straightforward and no nonsense type of guy, my kind of guy. Yeah, right, Sean. So I decided to listen and read the documents. I had plenty of time. As the Facebook group I was part of was experiencing a coup that I wanted no part of. A coup in the Facebook group. A coup d'etat. In my career, I dealt with high-level foreign assets using tradecraft techniques to successfully communicate, meet, and protect these high-value sources. Now he's sending grandmothers around into backyards in Canton to take pictures of people while they're sunbathing. I make nothing up. You know, if I tell you something, it's true. That's his team now. Okay. Someone had already trained Nick because he had the techniques needed to protect. Oh my God. So now Nick is a secret agent. Someone had already trained Nick because he had the techniques needed to protect his location and communications. Yeah. So did Karen when she used the Signal encryption app to communicate, which she uses, including with Sean. That's not high level stuff. Anybody can figure out how to do that. That was very impressive. He says, still, I did my homework and set rules. No deep state nonsense and no Bulgish conversations. Yes, Nick incorporates everything. This is Whitey Bulger's group was involved in this, and the Albert gang took over, and blah blah blah. I mean, this is. I don't even know if I should read the whole thing. It goes on and on. All right, we'll just kind of stop there. The entertainment value is good, but I had the feeling that he's taken down some stuff too, and that's because he never put a stop to any of that Whitey Bulger stuff. I mean, he bought into it too. Let's see if we have more on this case. I'm just looking because I had the feeling he took down the other post that Turtle Boy came in and ripped him a new one. Okay, all right, maybe it's in here. Let's see if this is the one where Turtle Boy said enough's enough. I don't see it, so maybe not. But the following is based on information. So again, these are not just wild speculations. He always claims that it's based on information. The following is based on information I have received from people who are very close to some ongoing federal investigations. These investigations will undoubtedly soon end the Massachusetts corruption problem that we have all been witnessing and experiencing. The Massachusetts corruption problem that we are all watching and experiencing is actually a United States of America corruption problem that has been under an intense, extensive, unprecedented, and massive investigation around the country for several years. This is a bad movie, and Sean thinks it's real. There's some massive global conspiracy, huge, and all of it is being exposed because of the killing of John O'Keefe. The ongoing nationwide investigations are targeting judges, legislators, governors, and other public officials working in every state, commonwealth, and inhabited territory of the United States of America. It's that big, guys. It's big. The investigations into the United States of America corruption problem have been going on for years and have heated up considerably all over the country because the investigators have compiled enough evidence against enough public officials to bring this old corruption system down at once. Wow. So we're going to get this massive, kind of like in Nazi Germany when Hitler took out the brown shirts, the night of the night of the long knives, I think it was called. He took out all the enemies in one night before they could react to it. So he sees something bigger than that there. They're going to take out everybody all at once, all the corrupt people that are part of this massive conspiracy. Maybe they'll even get this is like an episode of X-Files, right? Maybe they'll even get the secret aliens that run everything. We'll come back to aliens. The plan was apparently set in motion to control the judges, legislators, and governors around the United States under one central system operating outside the United States of America. Wow. This conspiracy involves secretly running the United States, all of it, from the littlest town to the biggest, from a central Dr. No evil kind of thing, and from an island, maybe Epstein Island, right? He believes this shit. What the my God. This seems to explain why there are so many bad judges and prosecutors in place all over the country at this time, and why nobody in any position of power seems willing to fix things and removing the corrupt individuals from power. Someone needs to do a wellness check with this guy. How could this happen? My outside sources tell me that the nationwide ongoing investigations have focused on the funding of the scheme, and it involves some corporate entities and other well-known names that you will recognize: the Open Society Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, other corporate entities such as Google, Apple, Walmart, and the World Bank, and a number of other domestic and foreign malign actors as defined by the FBI. The investigation around the country have it all, and soon the public will know. So this massive investigation into apparently a scheme that involves thousands of corrupt people. None of those people are being tipped off, though. They've managed to keep a lid on this, but yet little Sean McDonough, retired in Florida, he knows what's going on. He has a source. Jesus. This is because the investigators who are outside of Massachusetts are furious about what has been happening, and they are not nearly as tolerant of corruption as the public officials in Massachusetts appear to be and allegedly are. Yikes. Yikes. I'm going to take one more look to see if I can find the post that Turtle Boy went off on him. And if I can't find that, could be here. So let's see. This is Nick Fiorillo right here. All right. So yeah. So Aiden started replying here. Looks like Aiden has taken down some of his posts, but he says, Sean, you're way too good to associate with people like Nick Fiorillo, who was making friends. Well, there's no, I seriously doubt there's any connection with Kate. No one took $500 million from him. Judge Krupp, the same judge who issued the preservation order of Brian Albert's phone, recently issued a $6 million judgment against Fiorillo. He is a scammer, a thief, and a con artist. Sometimes Turtle gets something right. He could have been a good journalist if he had at least a little bit of integrity, but he doesn't. So there's a whole bunch of stuff so he had a lot more on this that he took down. So let's just play some of the clips. I got to do this without. Bear with me 1 second. I got to do this so I won't get the feedback. Might not be able to do it. Didn't think of this before the show. Sorry, guys. Oh, you know what? I can do it from here. Hold on 1 second. Let me put this right. Just bear with me. I'm gonna log in. Yeah. on a second.
Turtle Boy and Glare and LTL early on were paid operatives spreading a narrative and a story.
All right. Well, listen, hold on.
Now, unfortunately, that was a short clip. Let me try one more.
Doing okay, but they they're on the fence to Turtle Boy, to LTL, to Glare. Not you, Sean. You just went public with what's really going on. Has completely, I think they call it lobotomized the general population and the followers of the Karen Reed movement to think that is localized to a couple dirty cops. That is insane. To have anyone think for one moment that the reason why that they are covering for Brian Alberts and Colin Alberts and maybe others in the murder of John O'Keefe was, he got hit by a car. No, we know that they were taunting him from the bar. We know he proffered like drug activity at D&E Pizza and on his street to, Alberts, the brother. It's a cover up to keep what quiet? The municipal mafia that is running the most largest rackets that have partnered with the cartels in everything from migrant trafficking to buy votes to sex trafficking. Some reason
There's a couple more.
The local social media following in Massachusetts always likes to localize it and talk about the local 2 or 3 cops.
Right.
That's not what's going on. Let me explain.
Yeah, but I want to know what's going on with you. I want to know what's going on with you.
I want to say the correlation of what's happening to President Trump and the lawfare attacks and what they have done. They have done the exact same thing to Karen Reed and to me in real time. They use the exact same playbook and the identical types of lawfare strategies to silence us, from dismissing motions without proper accord to silencing and restricting testimony by witnesses, to fabricating evidence, to paying off witnesses, judges, and jurors. We all know that jury somewhere along the line was tampered with. The most corrupt judicial system in the United States. That's political, judicial, and law enforcement. It is in Massachusetts. It is being run and operated at the very high level by George Soros, with command over Thomas O'Neill in Massachusetts and William DeBeller in Connecticut, and their manipulation of the entire democratic system at the hands of Obama and the former puppet Biden. And what you're seeing, what we're all seeing, we're not all idiots. Everybody has watched the Karen Reed saga unfold. Everyone knows she's innocent, and the masses know she's factually innocent. But for whatever reason, the court still moves forward. The judge is still there, spewing and endorsing the same types of lies. This is all political kabuki theater.
All right. So this is obviously just largely, you don't get the full sense of just to what extent Sean entertains this stuff here, because he's not really saying it here. These were just clips that I appreciate the people that sent them to me. So they clipped things that they found interesting. But he goes, you got a taste of it at the end there. He goes into this whole thing of George Soros, and he takes in every conspiracy, every stuff that other people use in conspiracies, and he adds it here. And it's just sorry, I'm trying to clean out the files now. All right. So let's go to the next link on the Insanity Tour. And this is Young Jelly himself. Now, we'll also have, all right, so this is Peter Murphy, retired Canton Police Department.
They had a change of personnel, as you know. Tom Theodore was no longer on the board. Trish Boyden, who I supported, did get in. There'll be some changes next year, or should be some changes, I hope. And I believe they need a whole new, I think they've been there, John Conley's been there 40 years plus or something. I think they need new blood. I think they need a new regime. And I think, I mean, here's a perfect example, Mike, if you bear with me. A couple of weeks ago, there was a serious incident in the center of town where a Secret Service agent actually called me off duty and said, hey, I think there's going to be a problem here in the center. And I said, well, let me know. And called me back and he said, yeah.
So just to stop there, a Secret Service agent called up Peter Murphy to say there was going to be an incident in the center of town. And wait to hear what this incident is. You're not going to believe it.
Yeah, there's a problem. He said Aiden was just assaulted by two different individuals and right in the center of town, right in front of the ED sub and CF McCarthy's. And I said, well, that's not good. And then it took 17.
So Aiden Kearney shows up just to stir up the pot, just to stir up trouble. That's his only reason for doing anything in Canton. It's content generation. It's not, there's no goal here that has anything to do with Karen or exposing corruption. The goal 100% of every incident is centered on creating content for his channel. And so he goes to the CJ McCarthy's, which is the bar that John and Karen and John's friends were drinking in before they went to the waterfall. Now, CJ McCarthy's is right next to D&E Pizza, which is owned by Chris Albert. And so while I think it's when he's leaving CJ McCarthy's, he's with the girl that he's currently dating. He sees Colin Albert probably leaving D&E, and Colin's got a hood on because Colin has to. This is the life that these people have to live now. Colin has to walk around his own town that he grew up with a hood on, so he's not filmed everywhere and harassed everywhere he goes because of a ludicrous conspiracy theory. Okay, so he's crossing the street, and Turtle Boy recognizes him, and he starts taking a film. And oh, there he is. There's whatever he said. There's the killer himself. There's Colin Albert. Blah 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 blah. So at some point with all this going on, Jill Daniels, who is like 85 pounds, and what, I don't want to guess her age, but she's 85 pounds and she's in her 40s, I'd say. This is the assault that they're talking about. This is the assault. This is the assault that the Secret Service foresaw and warned Peter Murphy about. Are you crazy? I mean, it's madness. The Secret Service. So in Peter Murphy's mind, the Secret Service is protecting Aiden Kearney? Is that what, I mean? It's absolutely crazy. We'll play another minute or two, but
21 minutes for the police cruisers to respond in the middle of a Sunday afternoon, I believe, for a serious incident. It could have escalated, and never heard anything from the select board, like some sort of an internal review or what happened. Or the select board has looked into this and they're looking at reasons why it took 21 minutes on a 911.
Look at young Jelly nodding and then shaking his head. He's so disturbed by all this. Oh, Jelly. What did they teach you under the sea?
Call to get emergency response vehicles to a scene in the center of town, which is a centrally located hub in the center of Canton. Again, that speaks volumes to these people are supposed to be overseeing their department. There's a major, major issue of concern in 17 or 21 minute response. Apparently doesn't come across their radar screen and be a problem.
So just to refresh people who may not know exactly Peter Murphy, who stayed in the closet, so to speak, on this for a long time. But so last year, in August, I told Sean on the phone. Now, I used to talk to him almost every day on the phone. I didn't know that he was going to go in this direction. I thought he was a respectable former law enforcement officer that was. Jellyfish has Haley breath. Interesting. I don't even think Jelly would kiss her, but I don't know. Salty under the sea, Haley breath, I guess. But so I'm talking to Sean, and I told him, I said, look, I said, oh, sorry, just getting messages. I said, look, Sean, if you can get an image from a video early enough in the day that shows the condition of that taillight, if it's cracked but not missing pieces, there's a conspiracy. If it's missing pieces, there's not a conspiracy. And I was on the fence, just trying to get to the truth. I'm no Brandy Churchwell. I want to get to the truth, and so that's what I told him. Well, within days, he got back to me. I should show you these pictures now. He told me I can't share them back then, and I never did. But they were the pictures that we've all seen now in the trial. They were of Karen's taillight from the Sally Port. Somehow he had his hands on those. How? Now, I knew that he had connections with the Canton Police. So I knew we were told that he had connections with someone that was a retired Canton police officer who is basically turned out to be this guy, Peter Murphy. So I didn't know was this guy that had the one that had the access to what was clearly discovery material that was presumably taken by the state police, because it was before the taillight was removed. So I don't even think it could have been taken by Karen's private investigators. So how would he get so the only people that would have access to that would be Karen, because it was in discovery and obviously the state. But, was it who was talking to Karen? Was it this Peter Murphy? Was it Sean? We now know it was Sean, but back then I didn't know. And this is also around the time when he starts telling me it's all about Wanless, Detective Brian Wanless, not detective, Officer Brian Wanless, who I think is now since retired, but he's a Canton police officer who happens to own his own auto body shop. And so what these guys were saying, so Peter Murphy used to be the supervisor of Brian Wanless when he was still active on the force. So Murphy, wanting to get involved in this case, thinking something was going on, started nosing around and going to talk to all the guys that he used to work with. And Wanless must have told him, yeah, I helped him take off the taillight. Now, there was nothing suspicious about it. And we now know this. We've seen it from the trial. The criminologist, a woman who was on the chem team for the state police, had trouble getting the taillight off. And someone said, hey, we got a guy that works here who's an auto body guy. So he said, sure. So she said, sure. So under her supervision, Brian Wanless helped remove that taillight. There's nothing suspicious about that. And this was days after the crime, days after January 29th. So there's nothing weird about it at all. But to these guys, it was an aha, Wanless is the key. All right, because Wanless was co-opted by the conspirators to remove the taillight. Why? So they could take pieces and somehow race it over to 34 Fairview. And this is when I started really trying to dig into the timeline of when those pieces were found, when was the SUV towed, and where was the SUV all day. And it was within weeks of me asking that questions and digging into it and getting documents and talking to various people of realizing, no, there was just no time. There was no opportunity to tamper with this taillight. But these guys don't ask that kind of questions because they're not smart. I know that if that seems not nice to say it, I'm sorry. They're not smart guys. All right. And you don't have to be that smart to figure this stuff out, but they're not that smart. And they could have asked those questions, and they didn't. They could have said, well, how does this make sense? When was that taillight? Why would you have to remove the taillight in order to get pieces off it? Couldn't you just take a pair of pliers and pull some pieces off the broken taillight? They don't ask those kind of questions. But they were all about Wanless. And this is Peter Murphy. This was the big thing that he discovered. This was the only evidence that him and Sean ever had about anything. And the only evidence, that's it. The only thing they ever reported that had a kernel of truth in it. And the kernel was, yes, this officer, Brian Wanless, did own his own auto body shop and did help the state police, in particular the chem team agent officer, to take off that taillight. That's it. That's it. There's no connection. I remember also in the picture, there's this big, long, jagged scratch above the taillight. You can see it in the photos that came out in the trial. These were taken in the SAL report. And I can't tell for sure, but I would say this scratch looks to be 8 inches, maybe even more. But it's hard to tell size when you're looking at. Well, it's certainly actually maybe more because it looks to be about 1.5 times the length of the taillight itself. So let's guess that the taillight, and I don't remember the measurements, is say 8 inches. So it looked, so that thing is probably about a foot long scar. But to Sean and Murphy, that was Wanless, the nervous Wanless, slipping with his tool, his screwdriver, and going all the way up and leaving this long, jagged scar. I kid you not. This is what they think. So now that's someone that the Secret Service is going to be working with about this massive conspiracy. It's insane. It's insane how anybody takes this stuff seriously. So,
yeah, it seems selective too, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem like suspicious that like all those other times they showed up right away at the center of town when it was to protect Chris Albert, basically? But
yeah, the Canton Nine certainly drew. The Canton Nine drew an immediate response.
Right.
I have a friend who was actually a retired police officer who was going through the center of town, and they indicated when the cruisers came flying from all directions to address the Canton Nine, who were peacefully either seated or standing at the corner at Bolivar Street. That person that related the story told me, said, you would have thought there was, a plane crash or a bank robbery going on. Cruisers, blue lights.
So if you were to listen to this accounting and knowing nothing at all about what happened, you'd be shocked to learn that this big event that the Secret Service warned him about was an 85-year-old woman smacking a phone out of the hand of Turtle Boy because he was filming Colin or taking pictures of Colin. That's it. And that for some reason, the Canton Police didn't show up because what? Why? Because they wanted this 85-pound woman to beat the crap out of Turtle Boy? Is that what the conspiracy is here? So the Canton Police were told, stand down. Just like in Benghazi, they got the stand down order, right? Stand down. Don't show up to this call. Let Jill Daniels beat the crap out of Turtle Boy. Well, I guess if Kate can beat him up, so can Jill, right? I don't know. But this is how crazy this is, that people connect dots. It's not even like you could connect dots in an interesting way, I guess, in, I don't know, the JFK case or whatever, but this is like weird. It's so stupid. It's like one half a step above retarded. I don't know if it's politically correct to use that word anymore. But speaking of retarded, let's bring in the next guest on this parade of idiots. This is the lawyer, the grifting lawyer who has joined the defense team. I'm telling you, whenever I see him post, I always put 10 guys in any bar, 10 drunks in any bar. People get mad at me that I'm being mean. You can find 10 drunks in any bar right now in the state of Massachusetts that are smarter than this guy. He's that dumb. But listen to this.
For the first time.
Same for you.
Hope all is well. I enjoy your shows. And I understand that you probably will be representing perhaps somebody else that's involved in the periphery of this case or directly involved, which I'm glad to hear. I'll let you tell that story. I don't mean to steal your thunder.
That's okay. Well, let me start with the following. People need to realize how police culture works. And for somebody like Peter, who spent, a lifetime in law enforcement, and for someone like me on a much different level, worked with cops, both as a prosecutor and in private practice for years, there is a culture, and there are things that are generally never done, no matter what, the so-called blue wall or whatever. And what you're hearing tonight is like real hero stuff. I joked in the comments, you're like Serpico. And I mean that sincerely. In a town that small, in a town that incestuous, in a town controlled by like 2 or 3 families, it feels like, and their friends, to take the stand, knowing all these people.
I'm sorry. I don't know how much more you guys can take of this. So Murphy is a hero. He's like Serpico. He's working undercover. Do you see the pattern here? It's the same bullshit that Sean's talking about, this massive conspiracy. 2 or 3 crime families that control everything, even though they live in just ordinary houses and own very small businesses. I mean, it's unbelievable, but they're the center of this cartel conspiracy. And I'm just gonna put on the fan. It's just it's madness. And Betterov, is it Betterov or Betterov? I forget. Doesn't matter. He's a lawyer, and he's now joining Turtle Boy's team. And he says that Murphy's a hero for reporting all this stuff about the Secret Service. Oh, it's madness. And I got to think that Karen is looking at this. And I mean, unless she's just amused by it, because Karen's not dumb. Karen's an intelligent woman. All right. I'm not saying she's a rocket scientist either. She didn't come up with this social media plan. She didn't sit there and scheme it all out. No, she was reacting to opportunities, and initially going to Turtle Boy and having to get the story out, but then seeing this massive public reaction to it, and then this social media phenomena. There wasn't a plan for her to have people like Young Jelly and Sean and Olivia on the team. This is just something that evolved. She was smart enough to recognize it. So she's no rocket scientist, but she's no dummy. But she's definitely intelligent enough to be looking at this stuff that Sean is putting out there and Young Jelly's putting out there, and this weirdo Betterov, and saying, what is going on? Is this really helping me? Because the thing is so the media really grifted on this trial, Ted Daniel and a lot of the channels, NECN, to try to, because the conspiracy sells, And so over the last several months, for people that are only loosely paying attention to events and didn't follow the case or the evidence closely, it's not unreasonable for them to think there was something weird that went on here. And that's exactly what Karen wants. That's because her goal is to get out of jail. Her goal is not to prove there was a conspiracy, just to create enough reasonable doubt. But if you go too far, it's jumping the shark. That's an old term in the showbiz industry that relates to Happy Days. When they ran out of material, they had Fonzie jump a shark, and it was absurd. And so they're jumping the shark now. Not Karen, but these idiots like Sean and Young Jerk and Mark Betteroff and Peter Murphy, who are out there trying to claim that there's this elaborate George Soros-led conspiracy, that Canton is somehow the center of events, not counting that little island that they got off the shore where they secretly run the world or about to take over the world. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't, if I just told you this was happening, you wouldn't believe it. So you have to watch it for yourself. You have to look at their posts on Twitter, and you have to watch some of their shows. I don't really watch it's painful to watch this, because the level of stupidity is just, unless you're trying to make yourself laugh at it, you almost end up crying for the state of humanity, because it's so bad that Young Jelly's going to have like 80,000 views for this video of complete nonsense. There's nothing in it that's not nonsense. And he's just sitting there like a dope under the sea. I don't know. Okay, this sounds important. Oh my, it's unbelievable how stupid these people are. I know if my sister's watching, she's getting mad. She's like, you got to be nice. I want you to be nice to everybody. But at some point, look, like I said, if you want to say stupid things about who built the pyramids, I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, the Egyptians built the pyramids. But if you want to tell me that some alien race landed here and for some reason decided to build out of stone, okay, it's a fun theory. I don't care. I'm not mad at you. I think it's cool. I think it's cool. You have an entertaining view of the world, and I like it. But when you're peddling nonsense that is being used by gullible people to target innocent people and try to destroy their lives, I have every right, and I have a responsibility to call you an idiot. I have a responsibility to. It would be wrong of me not to. And each one of us has a responsibility to look at these people and say, you're idiots. Now, that said, is that the best way to you're never going to convince these people. So what you can do is try to, what we usually do here and have done with other things, and try to convince the people that are on the fence by just carefully outlining the facts. And that's generally what we do. We try to outline the facts, it's my approach to this. In fact, we're going to go over here now because this is an interesting case, and then I'll come back to questions later. But the Ellen Greenberg case, because it's interesting and it does have some of the elements that you would see in this case here, right? And so it's right to ask, is this a person that was murdered? And we're going to see a lot of the common elements here, but the old Sherlock Holmes expression is only when you've eliminated the impossible do you finally get at the possible. But I kind of say it slightly different. That for me, it's you're eliminating all the possibilities. And that's how I've always approached this stuff. It's just think of a rat in a maze, okay? Or think of a human rat in a maze, a human in one of those mazes. You remember those stuff they used to have at like the amusement parks, like Canterbury Lake Park and stuff? It was the House of Mirrors, and it was a maze basically, and it kind of spun around, and you had to walk through, and you had to figure your way through it. And so there were the whole thing of a maze is there's dead ends, and so you have to try out that direction, and then when you get to the dead end, you have to remember as you came back and say, okay, don't go down that path again. That's what a rat does in a maze. Well, it's really what we do. We're trying to figure out crime cases. You're eliminating all the dead ends. You're eliminating all the dead ends. And to me, so you're eliminating the possibilities. And so in this case, in the Karen Reed case, once I knew that it was not impossible, but all but impossible to have planted evidence in this case, but by the time the CERT team was there, then you know that a conspiracy becomes extremely long odds. And then now when you combine that with the other aspects of the case that are long odds, for example, like I've said, putting someone out to die on your own lawn and all those different people staying quiet. So too many things that each one of them by themselves has very long odds. All of those things have to happen in order for the conspiracy to work. So, that makes it kind of like a 1 in a million thing. And, you want to believe in a 1 in a million chance. All right, have at it. But it's kind of cuckoo. All right. So let's get to, for the moment. Now, I'm just going to go kind of quickly through this here. This is an article that I found from True Crime Podcasts, but it's a very well done article. So this is on the Ellen. Let me see if I can find a picture of Ellen first. Okay, yeah, it's a picture. She's an attractive 27-year-old girl who did have some, so I get a bigger picture, but some mental health issues. She was on medication. Let's see if I can make this bigger. I guess that's about as big as I can get it. So you can see it there, but she's an attractive woman. Oh, I didn't share it. Hold on a second. Okay, so here is Ellen. So she's an attractive 27-year-old woman, and this is 2011. She's a first grade teacher in Philadelphia. She's engaged to her fiance, Sam Greenberg. They both have the same last name, I guess. On January 26, 2011, Sam discovered Ellen on the floor of their Philadelphia apartment with several stab wounds to the body, a lot of stab wounds. A serrated knife was found lodged 4 inches into her chest. An hour earlier, Sam had left the unit to go to the gym, which was located in the apartment. When he returned, he claimed that the door was locked by a swing bar lock. So I don't know if that's the bolt lock. That sounds bigger than a bolt lock. There must be some swing bar, like this, like the kind of thing we used to have in the bar, located in the apartment. So he couldn't get through. So he called and texted and shouted for Ellen to open the door. So this is early in the morning, and they had just had a fight too, to no avail. So he asked the apartment's security guard to help him break in the door, but the security guard refused this request. Eventually, he broke in himself, and he found Ellen on the floor with these multiple stab wounds. He called 911, and he said that she stabbed herself. Now, if he's innocent, it's actually completely reasonable for him to think that, because she was locked in the apartment and he had just left. So it's not, that itself is not suspicious that he himself had that conclusion. An autopsy showed that Ellen had been stabbed 20 times. So that's the question. Is it possible to stab yourself 20 times? 8 times in the chest, 10 times in the back of the neck, and once in her abdomen, and once across her scalp. The manner of death was initially ruled a homicide. I think that was by the medical examiner. However, a report from the neuropathologist concluded that one of the stab wounds to the back of Ellen's neck had hit the spinal cord, rendering her numb, allowing her to continue stabbing herself to death. As a result of this report, the medical examiner changed Ellen's cause of death from homicide to suicide, and the case was closed. And I think this all happened within a day. Ellen's parents hired their own forensic pathologists. We'll see the names later, their famous names, who found that naturally, this is the problem when hiring experts. They're going to find what we'd expect them to find, right? So, and again, I'm not saying that she wasn't murdered, but I'm just saying you have to develop a sense of skepticism in these cases, because you go and you hire Henry Lee, the famous OJ pathologist. He's going to find what the family wants him to find, which is going to be homicide. And that's why they wouldn't have got a second opinion if they believed that the official story that she killed herself. So when you go out and hire that independent expert understands that you were hired to find a different result. Remember that in the Karen Reed case, right? So the ARCA guys understood that they were hired to find something that was the opposite of what the state concluded. Doesn't mean they're right or wrong, but just means you have to keep that in mind. All right, so Ellen's parents, so they hired their own forensic. And all right, so their pathologist found that the stab wound in question had penetrated Ellen's cranial cavity, which would have resulted in severe pain and rendered her in and out of consciousness, preventing her from stabbing herself 20 times. In 2019, so this is 8 years after the death, Ellen's parents filed a civil suit, so money, against the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office and the pathologist who conducted the autopsy, seeking to have Ellen's official cause of death changed from suicide to homicide, or at least undetermined. The case is still active. Now, when I say civil suit money, I don't mean that to be in any way derogatory to the family. So I want to be clear on that. So for instance, the family of Ron Goldman, killed by OJ, sued, but it wasn't about money. They didn't expect to get money from OJ. They were trying to get the justice that they didn't get through the court trial, through the criminal trial. So when I say it's about money, I'm not saying that money was their motive. I don't know. So it really can vary. I do think in the Birchmore case, money's the motive, because everything that we've heard is that the family didn't care about Sandra Birchmore. That's one of the great tragedies of her life. So the parents sued for. All right. So now he also says, for more insight on the case, I highly recommend the Prosecutor's Podcast and also Gavin Fish's website. Now, I want to also recommend Gavin Fish's website for this case. And just remember that name. If you email me, I'll send you a link to it too. But Gavin Fish, just Google it, get to his website on this case. And I've heard the name Gavin Fish. I think maybe Jen Kloffenaffer's been on his show. I'm not sure. I've never watched it. I don't know anything about him, but I'm a documents guy. And Gavin Fish's website on this case has every document. There's a lot of documents in here, just like this. There were a lot of documents that were eventually public in the Karen Reed case, right? So we can all together go to these documents and start coming to our own conclusions. And nobody should develop conclusions that are firm very quickly. You should, weigh as much of the evidence as you can, and then listen to the arguments of other people. So you may have a leaning right now, just even what I've already read, but you should not close your mind. That's confirmation bias. You want to keep an open mind and weigh the evidence carefully. So below, he's compiled some of the competing facts on one side or the other. So these are good. So he does a balanced approach here, it looks like. So these facts are supporting the idea that Ellen was murdered. And I can't verify these, but this seems like a very well put together article. So for now, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. In the long run, some part of this might not be exactly what it appears, right? So you always have to be skeptical until you see the documents. But even the documents, you have to be skeptical too, because police make mistakes, prosecutors make mistakes, so or sometimes fudge things. So you got to be careful. But all right, so the number of stab wounds, 20, and the location of the stab wounds, including 10 to her back, make it highly unlikely the manner of death was suicide. The stab wounds are overkill, which we often find in homicide cases where the perpetrator intimately knows the victim. In other words, this is a crime of passion. The stab wounds to the brain and spinal cord would have caused severe pain and injury, making it unlikely that she would have been able to ultimately stab herself in the heart. So remember, she was found, that was presumably the last stab, I would think, because that's the one that killed her, the one to the heart. I'm on the wrong side. There you go. A new technology called photogrammetry is a 3D recreation that shows that not all 20 wounds could have been self-inflicted. I've seen this. And I think Jen showed a picture of this too. So we'll come back to this, not tonight, but some other time. And so, but again, it's a new technology. That means it's not created necessarily by experts. And certainly wasn't created by the prosecution or the police. So we have to be really, really careful with things like that, because people like to stir up conspiracies on the internet. That's just how it works. That doesn't mean that there are conspiracies. Some conspiracies are real, but we have to understand certain basic rules. And one of the rules is that people are benefiting and exploiting conspiracy by stirring this stuff up. And it can lead to Netflix deals, right? It can lead to YouTube channels that have thousands of followers, like Young Jellies or Sean's, or look at, we're talking about Brandy. She's a regular guest on many mainstream shows now. So got to be careful with this stuff. That's just a general rule. All right. So Ellen's right hand was gripping the knife in her chest, even though she was left-handed. Now, so just the way my mind works, automatically, whenever I read something like that, multiple questions will go off in my head. So can you think of any reason why someone that was left-handed might use the right hand? Well, the thing that comes to my mind is the injuries. The injuries, we know that one of them is she partially severed her spine. So she may have actually incapacitated her left hand. Now, I don't know enough about the case. I'm just saying that's an idea that you table. All right. So maybe it's suspicious. So on the one hand, maybe a killer might not know that she was left-handed, and so might automatically put it in her right hand. Right. So that's possible. But there are other possibilities. And one that, like I said, comes to mind to me is that her left hand was for some reason incapacitated during her own attack on herself. All right, next reason. Suicides rarely involve knives. And when they do, they are often slashes to the wrist or the throat, not multiple painful stab wounds throughout the body. In such suicides, the victim will often remove his or her clothing. It's very unusual for victims to stab themselves through their clothing. So that's a good point. So The question though is it, if it, just because it's not the norm, has it happened before? So if you can find other examples where somebody stabbed themselves multiple times with a knife through the clothing. Now, if this is the only example of that, then that certainly looks really suspicious. But if there are other examples of it, then you also start to look into the circumstances of those other incidences. Were those people on medication, like we'll find out that Ellen was? Ellen was on some, were those people suicidal? Like Ellen was known to be suicidal. So this is why you have to both sides these kind of things. According to police reports, Ellen's body was found sitting on the floor with her head and upper body resting against the kitchen counters, which is inconsistent with how Sam described her in the 9/11 call as being flat on her back. Now, I also saw that a few months ago, the assistant medical examiner, I think, has come forward to say that they did find evidence that Ellen had been moved. So is this, oh, actually, yeah, he has this here. So there is evidence the body was moved. When EMS arrived on the scene, they noticed that Ellen was in a seated position in the corner of the kitchen with coagulated blood running horizontally from the nose to the ear. This suggests that she was initially lying flat on the ground when she was stabbed. So this is something you have to look at really closely here. And I don't know the answer. And we should not rush to judgment on it, right? We need to look closely and eliminate. It's not just about eliminating possibilities. There's another way of, another important part of this. If it's a fictional case like Sherlock Holmes or an episode of CSI, then yes, you can eliminate the possibilities or the impossibilities, if you prefer, in order to get that one thing that it must be. But that's fiction. In real life, it's often, most of the time, it's going to be more dirty than that. What it's not going to be as simple as you can eliminate this possibility. So what you can do, however, is make certain possibilities very unlikely. And this is what we did in the Karen Reed case. So we can't eliminate the possibility. It'd be almost impossible to eliminate the possibility that somebody pried off pieces of taillight in the moments after the accident, sometime from then during the entire day. So the pieces were found at 5:45 p.m. Karen was in the accident at I've established 12:32 is when she struck John, but let's just say 12:32 is around the time. So we know she was home by 12:36. So that's a long time, right? For which somebody could have had access to Karen's SUV, pried off pieces, and planted them in the snow at the scene. So it's really almost impossible to completely eliminate the possibility of evidence being planted. However, you can make it next to impossible or extremely long odds when you look at where the SUV was. So first, Karen drives it home and parks it in the garage. There's no sign that anybody broke into the garage. It seems unlikely that any kind of conspiracy was forming that quickly because it would have had to have been premeditated. There's no indication. Not only is there no indication that it was premeditated, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, who would pre-plan this idea that you're going to kill someone in this way and then leave them alive on their own lawn? That's your plan? If you're sitting around days ahead of time, that's your plan? No. So again, even if something had happened, hypothetically, right, are they able to come up with the idea of framing Karen that quickly and get into the garage and break into it and nobody finds out and it's not picked up by the Ring video and there's no damage done to the garage door? All those things seem incredibly unlikely. So, but you can't say they're impossible, right? Karen took the vehicle out to look for John and go to Jen's. Then Jen and Kerry and John took it back and parked it in the driveway. The niece was inside waiting for the neighbor to pick Mike Camarado to come pick her up. I think he arrived sometime around 7. If I remember right, I'm going to memory, so I'm not sure. It might have been 6:30, but I think it was more like around 7. And he spent some time there because the garage door wouldn't close. So he's trying to shovel out around it and fix the sensors. And eventually he has to unhook it and close it physically, manually. So not sure what time he left, But then the local police car did a wellness check at 8:22 when you have the dash cam video, and you can see the taillight is missing pieces at that time. So it had to be tampered with before that, and there was just very limited opportunities when it was parked there and nobody was around. So it's not impossible, but it's extremely unlikely, right? And this is what you want to do in a case. Is it's not just about eliminating the impossible. Often it's about taking what is more likely, what is the better evidence. So you may have something over here that feels like at least evidence you can weigh, but then you have other evidence over here that feels much more probable. Well, you have to go with the probable. You have to at least start out that way. And then as you put the whole thing together, if you're going to go with something that's improbable, you have to explain why. And you have to recognize it. You have to at least recognize it, right? So this is what you don't see with any of the free can read people. You don't see them ever recognize any of these things as being unlikely. They don't recognize that it's unlikely for all the people in the house to stay quiet. They don't recognize how unlikely it was for Jen and Matt to drive home, knowing that the plan was to put John out to die on the lawn. That even if Jen and Matt were psychopaths and don't care about other human beings, they're intelligent enough to know that that's very unlikely to work, that plan. And so therefore, if they don't go to the police, they're going to go to jail as accessories to murder. And their kids are going to grow up essentially orphans. They have 4 little girls at home. So, is that really sensible? So, and it's just, you have to go and look about what is the most likely in each situation and start to build your case that way. So Ellen had defensive wounds on her wrists that were overlooked. So I'll have to see about that, because my understanding is there were no defensive wounds. So, but again, this is we're likely to see. So you see a tiny couple of scratches on John's face, and that's a sign he was in a fight. No, it isn't. Now, so when they ask, this is a perfect. Actually, I love this because this is a great example. If you ask the medical examiner, as the defense team did, could those minor scratches have been caused from being in a fight? Well, she's going to say yes, because that's the truth. But it's really missing the picture. So if you get in a fight with someone, he's going to have, a broken nose and smashed lip to maybe chipped teeth, right? And massive wounds on his face. In addition to all those wounds, he might also have a couple of minor scratches. So when you ask the person that was beat up by Mike Tyson, were those couple of scratches caused by the fight? The medical examiner says yes. When you ask the same question about someone who has not been in a fight, the question still is yes, because you can't say that those kind of wounds can't result from being in a fight. But there were no other signs of being in a fight, and those were not real significant signs of being in a fight. They were minor. If someone is in a fight, you're going to see pretty significant wounds, and there was nothing like that. There's only the wound on the back of the head. That's it. And obviously the scratches on the arm, abrasions, or whatever you want to call them. So there were no injuries to the orbital bones in the eyes, and that's what she testified to. But it's easy to trick people. That's where Nick Fiorillo made his living at. There's a sucker born every minute. Okay? That Turtle Boy knows this. Trust me. Turtle Boy knows Karen is guilty, but he knows there's a lot of suckers born every minute. And that's the key to his little empire, that and the empire of dirt that he builds. But he knows. He's not stupid. He knows. And so when the defense team says, were those scratches, could they have been caused by a fight? Well, of course, the medical examiner has to say yes. And of course, the gullible will get fooled to say, see, the medical examiner said those injuries could have been caused by a fight. That's not how you interpret that. All right. The neuropathologist. So Ben, so Ellen had defensive wounds. I haven't seen this, so I'll have to see what those are. It's probably going to be some minor. My guess is, you'll have to be wary that it's going to be some minor thing that somebody is exploiting to say those are defensive wounds. But we'll see. All right. The neuropathologist testified in the civil case that the wound to Ellen's spine is post-mortem. So after she was dead. And the reason is that there was no hemorrhaging. In other words, she was already deceased when she was stabbed in the spine. If that turns out to be true, then yeah, she was murdered. You can't stab yourself after you're dead. Not even one of the zombies can do that, right? Maybe the free Canton Reed zombies can do that. Zombies do have some special powers. So we have found a skill that they have. The free Canton Reed zombies apparently, in theory, can stab themselves after they're dead. All right. Good. It's good to know the pink shirts have something going for them. All right. The stab wounds to the brain and spinal cord would have caused severe pain and injury, making it unlikely that she would have been able to ultimately lodge the knife into her chest. So the idea is, after she stabbed herself a bunch of times and she's in pain and possibly limited in her function, could she have done the final into her chest? The relative lack of blood in the crime scene photo of the kitchen suggests that most of the wounds were inflicted after she was deceased. Well, all right. So if you have a bunch of serious wounds and your heart is still pumping, they're going to bleed, right? But if the wounds are superficial, how much blood is there going to be? If they're very superficial, now I don't know. I haven't seen the report. But if she's got 20 stab wounds, but the first 10 or 12 or 15 are pretty superficial, is she going to bleed a lot? I don't think so. But I'm not a medical examiner. So, but you have to always be asking these both sides kind of questions. And I have seen the photo. There's blood there. How much blood should there be? I don't know. Dr. Wayne Ross, a specialist in forensic and neuropathology, re-examined Greenberg's death and found evidence of manual strangulation that was initially overlooked. That could explain the relative lack of defensive wounds. So they're saying she did have defensive wounds, but a relative lack of them. See, this is the thing. If you're going to stab somebody 20 times, unless they're unconscious, there's going to be defensive wounds. So that's something that obviously the conspiracy people have had to explain. And as is always the case, you can always find that expert that you need for your theory, just like the ARCA guys, right? And so they found this here. This Dr. Wayne Ross has specialized in, so he's claimed that there was evidence of manual strangulation. Well, believe it when we see it. But that seems to come up in a lot of these lawsuit cases where the official pathologist found no evidence of strangulation, but then later on, someone brought in by the family does find it. So Ellen was found clutching a white bath towel in her left hand that was not bloody. This may have been used to clean off any trace evidence like fingerprints. Well, then why is it in her hand? And I don't understand it. So the idea is that the killer cleaned off fingerprints from the knife and then put the white towel in her hand for some reason. That seems odd to me. There were fresh blueberries and a cut orange on the kitchen counter. So she was in the middle of cutting up some fruit. Ellen had called Vetri restaurant earlier, presumably to place an order for dinner, though this is unconfirmed. She had spoken to her mother earlier in the day and had made plans for the future. Again, we always see this when a lot of times when someone kills themselves and someone comes forward, a family member, to say that earlier they had been talking about future plans, so they couldn't have killed themselves. But I've never been suicidal, so I don't really know. But especially if someone is dealing with mental illness, I think you get these massive mood swings and that they're on medication. So you could be making plans and thinking about the future, even if in the back of your head you're thinking, I'm really depressed. And then it doesn't take much to change it. The medication kicks in or some chemical reaction in your brain. So I don't really find that to be an indication of anything. So This says there was no indication she was suicidal, but I don't think that's what I've seen from other articles, but we'll see. There was no suicide note. While spontaneous suicide is possible, these facts suggest she was not imminently planning to take her life that day. Well, there are a lot of suicides every day in the country. I'm no expert on suicides. But my guess is that with the great number of suicides, I don't know what percentage have suicide notes. I don't even know if the majority of them do. But even if, let's just say, for argument's sake, that 80% of suicides come with a suicide note. And I'm going to guess that that's wrong. I would think it's way less than that. But let's just guess that it's 80%. That 20% is still an extremely large number. There's a lot of suicides. So there's a lot of people, if that 80% is true. And this is something, you know what? I will do this real quick. Because as you guys know, I am a fan of ChatGPT. So I'm going to ask the question there. All right. I don't know why this thing won't click. What percentage of suicides Okay, so studies suggest that only a minority of individuals who die by suicide leave a note. Estimates range from 10% to 43%. That's about what I expected. Like I said, I threw out the 80% just to be safe. But that is what I expected. I expected it to be under 50. So some studies indicating 25 to 30% of suicides are accompanied by a note. So the fact that this Ellen did not leave a note is normal. So not only is it not unusual, but it's actually normal. But to certain people and to investigators, it's not. All right. So Sam, that's the boyfriend, his 911 call is very unusual, not only due to Sam's effect and behavior, laughing when asked by the operator if the knife is still in her chest, but also because he only noticed the knife in Ellen's chest after he was asked to do CPR, when he claimed to be unzipping Ellen's jacket zipper. So he was working with the body at the request of the dispatcher. So I don't know if that impacts the idea of her being flat on her back and then not flat on her back, but there might have been some movement there of the body innocently. And I don't know. I'm not giving, I'm just saying that could explain it. It is unclear why he had not noticed it earlier, unless he was some distance away from the body when he called 911, contrary to his statements. If it's a small knife, I don't know, you're freaking out. I don't know the angle that it was in. We always picture things. See, I've never seen what it looks like for a knife to be stuck into someone's heart, for a dead body with a knife in it. I've never seen that. I've seen similar things in movies. So what I've seen is the way a director imagines that looks like. And that maybe influences the idea in my head, but I've never actually seen it. So I don't really know what it would look like. So when you see it in the movie, it's going to be sticking right out, right? Right like that, right? It's going to be sticking right out. But maybe in reality, it's going to be more up like that. So it's lying down. I don't know. I don't know. So I don't know if the pictures will help shed any light on that, or at least a report. So when the 911 operator asked if he was willing to perform CPR, he asked, "I have to, right?" His statements about a lack of intruder, even though he could not have been certain of this, since the police only confirmed the lack of shoe prints on the balcony some time later. There's some misspellings in this article, so I'm trying to read through it. Sometime later, to appear to be a way of diverting attention from a homicide. So he's saying there's no intruder when people are saying, how could he know that at that point? But so I don't know, there's a balcony. I don't know what floor they're on. I don't know if they're on an upper floor. Was the balcony truly accessible? I mean, he had to break in the door. It was locked and barred shut. So I could, at least my early expectation is I'm not surprised that he doesn't think there was an intruder. Opportunity. If the manner of death is homicide, Sam is the only one with the opportunity to commit Ellen's murder. Well, I would agree with that. If you could prove that Ellen was killed, or if you could show that the better evidence, remember what I say, if the better evidence is that she was killed, then it does seem like it would very likely be Sam. But again, we don't, could someone else have had access to it? We don't know. He was the last one to see her alive. Her last text was sent. Well, this was in the afternoon then. I thought it was in the morning. All right. So her last text was sent at 3:47 p.m. And the last activity on her computer was at 5:46 p.m. And Sam left to go to the gym at 4:50 p.m., which would have given him sufficient time to murder Ellen, stage the scene. All right. So in other words, the last time of activity that that she's alive is at 4:46. But he leaves for the gym 4 minutes later at 4:50. So the idea is that within that short 3 to 4 minutes, he could have killed her, staged the crime scene, and still left to go to the gym. I mean, we've seen weirder things. I mean, Lizzie Borden killed her father on the couch a little after 11 p.m. I'm sorry, a.m., 11 a.m. And within no more than 8 minutes I've calculated, I haven't looked at it for a while, but I've calculated based on the time the call went to the police from there's no phone in the house, but from when the call did eventually go from, I think it was from a stables nearby, you can kind of calculate the time. So Lizzie had really, at the most generously, 8 minutes to clean herself up and get rid of the weapon. And that's being really generous. More likely, she only had a few minutes. So did she manage to do it? So Sam here had 4 minutes here, up to 4 minutes. Was that enough time to kill her and stage the crime scene? He didn't have to clean himself. Would he have had to clean himself up? I don't know. Motive. The one aspect missing from the murder theory is motive. Establishing motive is not required. However, motive is often a powerful element of a murder case. In this case, Ellen had bruising on her body with various stages of healing. So could that bruising have been from being in fights with her boyfriend on other days? Conversations with her friends and family in the weeks and months leading up to her death suggest that something was on her mind, but that she did not seem inclined to talk about it. She told her father that she wanted to move back to Harrisburg, which seemed out of the ordinary for someone with a secure teaching job and who was engaged to be married. This prompted her father to recommend that she seek out a psychiatrist. This is admittedly speculative, but it is possible that she was in an abusive relationship. So there's no evidence she was. And bruises, I think the average 27-year-old woman, if she was to die, has some bruises on her from something. I don't know. It seems like most of the women I know bruise a little bit easier. So just from bumping into something at the gym or in the house or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. You guys can tell me what you think. But so we'd have to see exactly what those bruises were. I don't know. I could be wrong. I think most people probably have some kind of bruise on them somewhere. So was it a bruise that looked like something violent, or is it just some minor thing? So I could be wrong. You guys can let me know what you think. So says she may have taken off her engagement ring shortly thereafter, which is why it was on the table. So the ring was off, I guess. This and the final piece of evidence in this article here, again, to supporting the idea of murder, the swing bar lock. Sam claims that when he returned to the apartment, the door was locked by this swing bar lock, and after about a half an hour, he forced his way in. If true, this would be one of the strongest pieces of evidence in favor of the suicide theory. However, no one witnessed Sam break in the door. Sam asked the apartment's security guard to help him break in the door, but the security guard refused. Photos show a metal door with a slinging latch above a regular exterior door lock. The latch has minor damage that is inconsistent with someone pushing in the door to get in. If Sam had forced his way in, we would expect at least one or two, there's a missing word here, but one or two latch pieces on either side of the door for the door frame to be completely broken off. It is also not impossible for an individual to latch a door from the outside. There are no cameras in the hallway. So I guess if you're trying to stage a murder, see, he would have to somehow close that door. It's a door that you have to close from the inside normally, right? But they're saying that it might have been possible to somehow close it from the outside. I can't imagine how. I'd have to see the door. That seems a little weird. But because that's the thing. If there was no way for Sam to latch that bar lock from the outside, then he's innocent, right? Because someone had to latch that. Someone had to use that bar lock from the inside. So it seems a little weird. But that's, this is the thing. People, if they want to have a conspiracy, if they want to believe in a conspiracy, they won't let something like that get in the way. They'll maybe come up with a theory that he climbed up into the balcony, even if this turns out to be in the 7th floor. I'm not saying it is, but they'll say, oh, he climbed up on the balcony and got in and latched the door and then climbed out and climbed down and then went in and went through the motions of breaking it. I don't know. You'd have to see exactly what the circumstances are of that door. All right. So here's the suicide. Here are the facts supporting the suicide theory. Ellen was on medication for anxiety and was seeing a psychiatrist. She reported stress with her job as a primary school teacher. She specifically denied any stress in her relationship and denied that her fiance, Sam, was abusive towards her. There is no evidence that Ellen was malingering in her consultations with the psychiatrist. In other words, there's no evidence that she hid from the psychiatrist the fact that she was in an abusive relationship. On December 18th, so about a month before, Ellen's computer revealed search results for suffocation and suicide methods. So a month before, she seemed to have been having suicidal thoughts as she was looking up those methods. On January 10th, so a few weeks later, her computer revealed searches for a quick death. She also opened an article on euthanasia and browsed a website about painless suicide. So she was thinking about it. It seems like it, right? I mean, unless this is all part of an elaborate plan weeks ahead of time to stage that. Although her death was more violent than her searches would suggest, they indicate that suicide was on her mind. Yeah, I would have to agree. Ellen's computer activity indicates she was on her computer at 4:46 p.m. She left her apartment to head to the gym at 4:50. Oh, I'm sorry. Sam left to go to the gym at 4:50. He left the gym at 5:27. He was last seen on the video surveillance at 6:28. He calls 911 at 6:31. The timeliness suggests that he could not have murdered Ellen since he left only 4 minutes after her last computer activity. Although I guess in theory, right, depends on that activity. He could have killed her earlier and then done the activity himself, right? I don't know. That's just a thought. So the odd circumstances of the death can be explained by spontaneous suicide, which could have been caused in part by Ellen's medication. She was on Ambien and Klonopin. The side effects include potential suicidal thoughts, actions. Ellen had only been taking these antidepressants for about 5 days, 5 days to 1.5 weeks before her death. Both medications were prescribed at Ellen's request since her previous meds were not helpful in treating her anxiety. There were shallow stab wounds that appear to be hesitation wounds. Yes, I think that's what they're called, hesitation wounds. So there is a history of this with suicidal people. At the back of the neck and the chest, which is consistent with suicide. There is, so, would somebody begin killing themselves by trying to do it in the back of their neck and their head? I don't know. But you're talking about someone that's frantic and they're not in their right mind because of a reaction to the medications or whatever. There's no forensic evidence tying Sam to Ellen's death. No blood seen on Sam's person. No bloody clothes. It would be extremely difficult for Sam to murder Ellen, stage the scene, move the body, and clean up without leaving any trace DNA. So yeah, there was no trace DNA found on her clothes. I don't know. I don't know how that could be though. How could there be no trace DNA if he was in her apartment earlier and he is or was her fiance? But I don't know. It's very difficult to get straight answers on DNA. All in the span of an hour or less. All right. In homicides involving stabbings, the perpetrator often cuts themselves. That's true. This is true. And this is what we predicted in the Brian Kohlberger thing before they caught Brian Kohlberger, that he would have injuries on his hands because it's stabbing someone with a knife is violent and that knife tends to slip and you will cut your hand. I don't know from experience. And there were no reported cuts on Sam. The damage to the latch on the door is consistent with Sam's statement that he had to force his way into the unit. If the door was not actually latched, it would have been risky for Sam to ask the security guard for help in breaking in, since the security guard could have agreed to Sam's request. So in other words, they're saying that, yes, it was latched because no one was there to prove that it was latched, but they can tell that it seems to have been based on the damage. When you're breaking this out, it probably knocks some screws out or something, or splintered some things. The lack of any shoe prints in the balcony suggests there was no outside intruder. The neighbors did not hear a struggle. After Ellen's death, her parents told police they had no knowledge of abuse. So this, so it's terrible. So, these people, they said he was a fine young man. So they like this guy. But now they're suing him for murdering their daughter. If he didn't, it's awful, Sam texted Ellen after he left the gym and was attempting to get inside. These texts include, hello, open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. Hello, you better have an excuse. What the fuck? I have no idea. Oh, no, you have no idea. The nature of these texts are not what one would expect if Sam was staging a suicide. The texts appear genuine. If Sam had already killed Ellen and was sending the texts as a ruse to make it appear as a suicide, we would expect him to word the texts in a way that would make himself look more favorable and concerned. Instead, the text suggests that the two have been. So, yeah, they seem normal. This, again, back to Karen Reed. It's very hard to compare because Karen's wasted. But to me, the text between 12:37 and 1:18, those, I forget, 5 or 6 texts there. Not texts, I mean voicemails in that case. They don't suggest someone that's trying to cover her tracks. So had she struck John and knew the condition he was in, and she was being clever and was trying to cover her tracks, she would have left voicemails saying, for instance, oh, don't forget to bring some milk home when you come home, honey, or, don't forget to leave the light on or something, whatever. I'll leave the light on for you. There's nothing like that in them. Now, you can't, because she's drunk and angry, you can't really read too much into that. But there was certainly nothing that indicated that Karen knew. There was later when she called Kerry Roberts. So I think she figured it out, put it together. But I don't think in that first hour that she knew. Some counter arguments to the suicide theory above. So this is the end of this article, but some counter arguments to the suicide theory in the Ellen Greenberg case. Suicidal thoughts and search terms related to suicide do not necessarily mean one will act on it. It is inexplicable that Ellen would search up painless suicide and then stab herself multiple times in such a violent manner. I think that's weak. She obviously had suicide on her mind, but she needed to get to that frantic state in order to be pushed to do something like that. I mean, it's the tragedy of suicide, right? I mean, to do something like that when you're 27 and you're attractive and you have a job and you have a good family, something's not right with the wiring of your mind, and psychiatrists are trying to fix it with some medication, and I'm assuming that often they can, but there's a very risky period in that. It's not guaranteed. It's tricky. It's not an exact science. And so if something flipped that made her frantic and depressed, and you're going to do something reckless. It's not like you're just going to carefully plan out your suicide. It's a very spur of the moment thing, I think. She had told her mother that recently prescribed medication was finally helping. But that's just what she told her mother. So, I don't know. There were no reported side effects. It would be unusual for the medication to suddenly induce suicidal ideations after it had been working for her. But it wasn't sudden because she was searching on her computer for suicide stuff. So just because she didn't mention it, why would she want to mention that to her mom? She wouldn't. The fact that neighbors did not hear a struggle cuts both ways, though it likely does more to support the murder theory. If Ellen had inflicted the 20 stab wounds to herself, we would expect neighbors to report screams and cries of pain. I don't know about that. Maybe, but it's hard to know. However, the lack of screams under the murder theory could be explained by surprise attack and a stab wound to the spine that instantly paralyzed her. So she had a partial severing of the spine, and there's no way to know what the effect of that was. Did it partially paralyze her? We don't know. Did it change the pain she was feeling? Did it numb her? Don't know. And I think the medical examiner had concluded that it probably did, and that's why she was able to continue stabbing herself. But, that's really too hard to know. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. In other words, the fact that there is little to no forensic evidence tying Sam to the stabbing could be explained by the use of gloves and the subsequent disposal of inculpatory evidence. Sam went to the gym. Presumably there is a shower in the gym, and he could have washed the blood away at that time or in the apartment shortly after the murder. This is speculative, but it does not appear that the police examined the bathroom for trace evidence. That would be the bathroom at home or at the gym. If Ellen was strangled and then stabbed, then we would not expect Sam to have much blood on his person, since most of the stab wounds would have been inflicted post-mortem. So that's the key thing. And I don't know if that's going to be the battle there were those wounds post-mortem. So we'll see what we'll see what the evidence is as we go forward. And this is the last on this. The parents' statement about Sam being a good fiance is not conclusive. It is not unusual for victims in domestic violence situations to remain quiet. Yeah, that's obviously true. So, all right. So that's the Ellen Greenberg case. And Gavin Fish is where you want to go to get the documents. So if you're interested in joining the discussion on this, please do that. Go to Gavin Fish and let us know what you guys think of the evidence. So there's a lot of kind of both sides evidence here to look at. And it's reasonable based on that to kind of lean either way, right? So just want to say thank you to people first. So Frank Perry, member for 5 months. If this was true, would they have not taken Sean? That was obviously from earlier, so I'm not sure He was obviously talking about the Sean McDonough stuff, where they have not taken Sean. So I guess what he's saying is, if there's this massive conspiracy that little old Sean is exposing, and it's this truly global conspiracy, the most powerful, the government and agents and secret agents, and all, wouldn't they take down Sean? Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. It's true, Frank. Good point. I mean, how hard would it be to take down Sean or anybody, really, right? If you're that powerful, and they didn't do it. Frank also says, so if this is such a high level conspiracy and cover up, do you not think they would have enough resources to have someone like Sean disappear? Yeah, same point. Thank you. And Tom gifted memberships. Thank you, Tom. Good to have you here as always. Tom Fleming. Yeah, Lavish Love says Jelly has Haley breath. Sorry. Lavish Love says, Caroline, go tell your daddy. Just repeating it. That was at 9:12, so I'm not sure what the context of that was and what it means. So, but thank you, appreciate it. Before I get to a couple of questions, I want to talk about one other thing. So, I've been trying to figure out ways to make the whole membership thing interesting and useful for the people that support the channel with the paid memberships. I think it's like $1.99 a month, but I appreciate it because that actually keeps the channel going. The basic expenses are a little over $100, and I think right now there's like 60 members, and so that's enough to basically cover it. And that's all we really need, is to cover the expenses of the StreamYard and a couple other services that I have to rent, and that's enough. But I want to be able to, in appreciation for those people that do that, give them something back. And never doesn't seem like we have enough to do like a big members only show. But here's what I thought of, and this combines with something else that I think people could, if they're interested, maybe help with. So what we could do is, I have worked on today reactivating the old Discord server that I had last summer, cleaned it all out, and or most of it out. I still have the documents in it from the Karen Reed case. But what I think we would do is, for those that have joined the members, they, if they're interested, would be eligible to join us in the Discord. And in the Discord, we can all communicate with each other. We can share ideas about cases that we want to look into, or cases that we are looking into. And we can also the Discord is capable of doing its own video. So, Jennifer, don't worry about it. You don't have to afford a membership. You're a good person. Anybody that says they want to come in can come in. If you're a regular that's participating here, Discord is free, and that's okay. And if you can't afford it, we don't want anything anyways. So we're fine. We have enough. That 60 is enough to cover our costs. So don't worry about it. So what I'm going to do. So yeah, TJ, have you got a link to join Kevin? So what I'm going to do is, over the next week, have a series of small, brief members only shows on the YouTube channel. And in there, we'll just briefly talk about the Discord, and I'll show you how to sign up for it. And then I'll show you how to get in touch with me so I can invite you in. And so then in that Discord, we can all just support the channel or support each other. Do some private shows in there where people can participate at whatever level they want. And by the way, for those of you who don't have Discord, it's very simple. If there's a boomer out there that's freaking out, I don't want to get this new thing, it's really easy. And I'll talk you through it if you need to. And it's also, you can put in whatever screen name you want. So a lot of people, because of what goes on in social media, want to maintain their anonymity. Real easy to do in Discord. Not a problem at all. So you can put in whatever name that you want. I don't know how to drive Discord. I'm not sure what that means, 65. But yeah, so we're going to be setting this up. It's already kind of set up now, but I got to figure out the best way over the next week so I can get people invited in. I think the easiest ways will just email me and tell me your Discord name, and I'll send you the invite. I think that's probably the best way to do it. So Jennifer, you just would go on to Google or Bing and download the Discord app so that it's on your laptop or your phone. And so you will have to sign into it initially. So once you sign in, you're in, and you'll see it's pretty easy to use. Like anything new, there's a moment of feeling your way around, but it's really not difficult. Hey, if I can use it, it can't be that difficult. So, but if you have any problems, I'll tell you how to get in touch with me, and I'll talk you through it. And don't worry about it. We'll all get through it. So yes, it is an app. And so one of the things that I also thought, and this would be a good vehicle for people to help me there, is if you're watching a video, a YouTube video, particularly a true crime podcast, especially if it's something that is one of the cases that we're talking about, and you find something that's interesting or you find something that's funny, like earlier, Peter Murphy claiming that the Secret Service called him to warn him that something big was coming in the town of Canton. And there it happened when Jill Daniels assaulted Turtle Boy in the middle of the town square. That's funny shit. I mean, I'm sorry. That's funny shit because it's so stupid. And so what I want is if people find something like that, to just message me. Or I think the Discord will be a great way to do this. Just tell me what the video is and what time to go to. That's simple. So you don't have to go. So you would help this channel a lot. You don't have to do anything beyond what you're already doing when you're watching something like that. But just if you note something that's funny, particularly, but just entertaining or interesting, if it's an interesting point, just note the time and drop me a message about that time. Or if you know how to make a clip, that's even better because we can put the clip up. But if you don't know how to do that, don't try to learn something new. It's okay. You don't have to do that. Just send me a message with, hey, I'm watching Sean's video and you'll never guess what he's saying now. And it's at 14 minutes and 4 seconds. Check it out. So, and then I'll look at it. And if it seems like it's something that I think people on the show will be interested in, we'll just bring it up on the show. Why not? So, I don't know what else is. Let's see what else Hefe is covering because he does. Oh, this is another thing. So, and I forgot I got to go over some of the video too from the shoot from the other day. I'll make that quick. All right. So let's go back to Sean's for one moment though, if you don't mind, because this is entertaining. All right. Going through the motions. So check this out. This is his guest from yesterday. And I don't know much about him. I don't know anything about him. But you can tell from this is all right. So I've never heard of this. But Sean had on this guy from another podcast called Calling All Beings. So it's called Cab, and he's got a picture of a UFO with an alien, and that might be a Sasquatch in there or Chewbacca. Not sure. But just full disclosure, that's a loaded word, right? I love alien shit, I mean, I used to buy UFO magazines when I was a kid. I bought that stuff instead of comic books. When I was a kid, I always wanted to see a UFO, and that was an era of Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of. It was cool shit. But I haven't believed probably since I was about 14 that aliens are actively visiting this country and abducting people. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good story. So I still like it. I love a good story. I would love to believe that Bigfoot is real. So I love a good Bigfoot story, but I don't believe in it. But so I actually, even myself, I tried one of the first channel that I tried to launch a few years ago was called Our X Fault, and I still use that on Twitter. But the idea was just to get good because I'm a writer, and just to get good stories, aliens, Bigfoot, whatever, ghosts, anything entertaining. But I kind of abandoned that channel. But So I don't mind a good, good story like this. But this is where Sean is going now. He's never talked about any of this except for his theories on Karen Reed are kind of similar to this, aren't they? But
work on that, and we will have a video for the true crime portion of Calling All Beings. Just to give you a little background, we are one of our chief investigator, Courtney, is doing a missing persons investigation in Pennsylvania. She spent the last several days there, and we are going to try to help a family to find out what has happened to their loved one who's been missing since 2006, including bringing in cadaver dogs. We have a dog handler, and we've been using 3 remote viewers and a couple psychics. And so that's going to be Calling All Beings True Crime Unsolved, which is going to be disparate and apart from our UFO show. The Karen Reed show, Karen Reed case, I became aware of fairly recently, and absolutely have dove in firsthand. And I am one of you, full blast, FKR and Justice for John O'Keefe. My name is DJ, retired USAF special ops guy. And
all right, so you can see where this is going, right? This is now every conspiracy junkie is jumping on this because there's tens of thousands of views to be mined just by embracing the conspiracy. So this guy is a conspiracy guy, right? His channel's about aliens, alien abductions or whatever. And now to grow his audience, he's embracing this conspiracy too. Doesn't that really tell you everything you need to know about what this is? I mean, what drives this whole Karen Reed phenomena? It's a huge part of it, So let's skip forward a little bit to where they must have streamed this on both channels, and that's why it starts out on this one. So here's El Hefe.
What's going on in the case. And I am, as I told you, I went to Dean College.
They're both going with a gold theme in the background.
Many of my classmates are distinguished law enforcement officers, some still active, some retired. And I know they're probably mortified, and they're in a difficult spot like you and Peter Murphy are, right? So, right. But I know I did talk to one of them. I can't say who he is because he's rather prominent in the area in law enforcement. But, he basically just described it as an S show. Well, you know what?
That's an understatement. That's an understatement.
Yeah. And I said to him, I said, Chief, this would not have happened in your town. And he's, like, I know it wouldn't have. So I just want to say, I am a big fan of not only Sean 2.0, I am also a fan of Sean 1.0. And you know what?
All right. So there's a Sean 2.0 and a Sean 1.0. So Sean has obviously told this guy that he's pivoting away from Karen Reed. And this is what's going on now. And this is, again, jumping the shark, although sometimes it can work, right? So you've built up this audience of tens of thousands of people by running this conspiracy theory stuff. And then now you're going to pivot away and hope that you keep a certain percentage of those people on your channel as you pivot to whatever. In the times that I talked to Sean last year, he never discussed UFOs or wild conspiracy theories or any of that stuff other than kin. So I think he's just going, I doubt he's interested in it. He's just kind of going wherever he needs to do to expand his audience. So from this perspective, he's not crazy. He's just utterly lacking in integrity. So he's going to cleverly wind his, he's going to be an Alex Jones kind of guy. He's just going to go down every crazy conspiracy theory he can just to build the numbers up. And, if this was, you got to wonder what is really going on? What does Karen think of this stuff? Is this, how much damage does this do to Karen? This was one of her main guys, someone that I don't know if she still does, but was communicating with him over an encryption app, the Signal, for a long time. As Alan Jackson was communicating with her, the FBI agent, Leah Ferrero, assigned to this case by the U.S. attorney was communicating regularly with Sean. So what is this? Is this like disinformation? I mean, I don't think so, but it's, what really is going on here? Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. But it's like even all the same people that we've recognized over, some of them that used to be in my channel back a year ago. Oh, we love you. You can still see him in the chat. We love you, Sean. You're brilliant. You got to, these people believe all this shit. And same thing, Peter Murphy, when he's talking to Young Jelly there. And I'm looking at the same thing in the comments. People like, oh, right on. This is brilliant. Some woman gave him $50 just to say, this is awesome. Thank God for you people. It's madness. There's no other word for it but madness. I don't know. If it wasn't for the fact that innocent people were being harmed by this, I'd sit back and laugh and just kind of enjoy it, right? But it's kind of hard. You really can't do that because obviously John is never going to get justice because of it. But, John, his life is over. Getting justice is important, but it's not going to do anything for him. It will help his family. But to take some relief off the innocent people that are being smeared with murder, the murder conspiracy, that's why it's important for the truth to come out here. And so that's why I can't really laugh at this kind of nonsense that's going on here. All right, well, look quick. We'll take a few questions, and then it's time to get a bowl of ice cream. Should I pretend I'm boozing up here? You know what? I should make myself a drink on some of these nights just to relax a little bit. It kind of hurts my back sitting here, but I don't usually think to do that. And I don't drink. I drink very rarely, but I should have made myself one. I don't know what we have in the house. So let's see if you guys have any questions. All right. So James Hamlet says, you agree her EDR says she stopped. She's probably talking to someone. James is probably talking to someone else, but she says she stepped on it, I think you mean. So the EDR is the black box data, and that does not say anything. There was the black box data only leaves a record if an event is triggered, and that creates a CDR. So that EDR creates a CDR, which is a crash data report or crash data retrieval. And none was created here. But as Dr. Wolf of the ARCA guys testified, that's not unusual. It's the norm because of what he said, the size differential between a pedestrian and a vehicle. So the EDR did not create a crash report. So there was no data that was retrieved from the EDR, which is another word for the black box. However, there is another system gathering data, reading this same exact data coming from the brakes and the steering wheel and the accelerator and various things. The other system monitoring that within a Lexus or Toyota vehicle is called TechStream. And TechStream actually does record more than just crashes. So the EDR generally just records a crash. And it usually isn't able to detect a crash if it's with a pedestrian. But the Toyota TechStream is a little bit, it has algorithms that are reading the data coming through. And if it sees something that it is trained to consider unusual, it triggers an event. And so when I say triggers an event, that means it creates a snapshot. And that snapshot we can read. So in the cycle in which John died, there were the key cycle in that TechStream data, there were two events that were triggered, and one was the 3-point turn. And now a normal 3-point turn won't trigger an event, but this one did because she hit reverse with the accelerator. In reverse, she hit the accelerator more than 30%. And according to Trooper Paul, that triggers the creation of an event. So that was on Cedar Crest Street. And then 8 minutes and either 4 seconds or 9 seconds later, depending, I'm not sure exactly how that's interpreted, but let's go with 8 minutes and 9 seconds. So 8 minutes and 9 seconds later, another event was triggered. And this was when Karen put it in reverse for 62 feet. They calculated 62 feet. And the data won't say 62 feet. So that's a calculation. But you know the time, the length of time that it was in reverse, and they know the speed that is in the data. And they know the accelerator was depressed 75%. So she did really punch it. And so that data is from the tech stream. So there was not, the ARCA guys did not forget the tech stream or forget about it. They were not given the tech stream by the FBI or the U.S. attorney. We don't know exactly how that communication went down. We may never know, but that's something that investigators need to get to the bottom of. But they never gave them the tech stream data, and there's no indication that they ever asked for it, which is extremely suspicious because they are experts on tech stream. So really it's the equivalent of a pathologist being asked to do an autopsy but not being given the body. So that's no, the vehicle isn't lying. The vehicle, it's a matter of interpreting the data. There was no reason to go in reverse. Well, we don't know why she went in reverse, but my theory is that she didn't know how to get home going forward, going by, what is it, Chapin Street? So, but she had just come down Cedar Crest, which was behind her. So I believe she was backing up to turn around and go back up Cedar Crest. But we don't know because her GPS was off. So we don't know. Kevin, what was about Dr. G doing an autopsy on the girl? So her name was Ellen Greenberg. Ellen Greenberg. Ellen Greenberg. This was from 2011. And that article I read from tonight, I was reposted in Reddit. So I found it in Reddit. So I can send you the link to that, or you can just search Reddit for Ellen Greenberg, and it's maybe the third or the fourth article on the list. There was a couple other good articles in there, so you can check it out. Yeah, the dent in the back door matches up perfectly with the hand. I've showed the picture before. I'm really too tired to dig it up right now, but one of our great regulars here, her son is 6'2", and he stood next to the Lexus, and not the Lexus, but the same model of Lexus, and his elbow is exactly where the taillight is. And if he's standing like this, the dent is exactly where John's hand would be. Exactly. It matches up perfectly. So that's where the dent is from. Toyota is very straightforward with tech stream. What does that mean? So, well, she went forward for 3 seconds and then put it in reverse. So my guess is she put it in drive. And actually, according to Ryan Nagel's testimony, she never put it in park. So it may have been in drive the whole time. And she took her foot off the gas. Off the brakes and started going forward. Welcome, Nicole. Thank you. New member. Thank you, Nicole Joyce. And according to the data, she went forward for a few seconds like that and then slammed it in reverse. But we don't actually know for sure. She could have went in drive more than that because the snapshot only goes back 5 seconds from the triggering event. And the triggering event was when she put it over 30% in reverse, the accelerator over 30%. So it's possible she was going forward a little longer than that. So we wouldn't have that specific date on that. But to me, she puts it in drive to go forward and then realizes she doesn't know how to get home that way. So she puts it in reverse. But we don't know. It's, other people believe that she went on purpose to try to scare John or whatever she did in anger. And then after she did that, after she went 62 feet backwards, after she hit John, she put it in drive and drove past John to go home. We'll never know. Trooper Paul calculated all of those different possible routes because he didn't know. They did try to get ring video to show it, and they were never able to get it. Well, so some data can be misinterpreted and some data can't. Like, so for instance, the health app data that shows that John last moved at 12:32 and 16 seconds, that really can't, that's really not, can't be misinterpreted. It, we don't know what he was doing at that, in that last movement, but we do know that that was the last time he moved. Now, the health app data earlier, when it falsely concluded that he was going up and down stairs, that algorithm within the health app is trying to interpret John's movements, but it doesn't know. And so some data requires interpretation, like same with the 227 search. So other data is very hard for GPS to be wrong. So GPS is a very solid, reliable data. He last moved at 12, according to the health app, he last moved at 12:32 and 16 seconds. According to GPS, he never, the last location was right about 12:25. And that doesn't mean he didn't move. He may have moved within that 15-foot circle. But so, and obviously he did move getting out of the car, but he never moved very far. That was his last, the last GPS position was the same. What if it's the wrong key cycle? So we're doing the best we can to interpret key cycles. Here's the thing. So if you look at Trooper Paul's key cycle printout there, you got 1162 is the one that he identifies as where Karen struck John. Now, within that, he explains are 3 trips. The trip from the waterfall to 34 and then to One Meadows. That's trip number 1. Trip number 2 is a few hours later when Karen goes out looking for John, goes to Jen's, and then comes home. That's trip number 2. And then several more hours later is the trip driven by Karen's father of the vehicle to Dighton. Now, those 3 trips are combined into one key cycle. That's the way the data came out. Now, the question is why? And then after that is a key cycle where a short one with no data on it, where the tow truck driver drives it into the Sally Port. And then after that are all the key cycles that Trooper Paul was doing the testing. So why did those 3 trips combine into one key cycle? And the best explanation, and a very reasonable explanation that we've been able to get. Now, unfortunately, there were so many aspects of this trial that were not done well, and this was one. We don't know if Trooper Paul didn't know. We don't know if Lally didn't know and just didn't ask. But they left this. That alone was going to potentially create reasonable doubt for a jury because it's not explained. Why would those 3 trips be included on one key cycle? And we think the reason is because the key fob was left in the car. And these, you no longer, when they first were looking, say 10 years ago, at how to calculate trips, you had the idea of an ignition cycle and also of a key cycle. The ignition cycle would be when the engine starts and when it stops. But that's now something that is not a good indicator of a trip because you have these economy-saving features, fuel-saving features built into your car that if you don't turn this thing off in your car, your ignition will stop when you come to an intersection, like say a red light where you stop for more than a second. The engine will shut off and then it'll start up automatically when you hit the accelerator. So it's no longer easy to just, auto stop. Right. Thank you, Jimmy. And Jimmy's done a lot of good research on this. So yes, thank you, Jimmy. Let me know, Jimmy, if you found anything else out about key fobs. So that would be a reason why it's difficult to go by ignition cycle. So you go by key cycle. But again, the keys, once upon a time, not very long ago, you had to stick your key in the ignition and turn it. But that's no longer the case. Now you just have to have the key fob within the vicinity of the vehicle, and then you hit the start while you touch the brake and hit the start. So you're basically hitting the start. So that seems to be the best explanation, but it's not rock solid at this point because I've joined a couple of text stream forums, and I've asked these questions there and have not been able to get any kind of an answer one way or the other. In addition to that, right now you can just press the button. Okay. So yeah, so you can just press the button. I've actually emailed the ARCA guys, believe it or not. I don't expect them to answer back, but I've emailed them with that question about the fob. We'll see. Maybe someday they'll answer back, but I don't think they want to. In case, not that they know who I am, but I'm sure they'll recognize what we're talking about, and they'll probably say, "No, don't touch that one." But just checking my messages. All right, so oh, we lost the comments. Huh. All right, there we go. Sorry, computer acting a little buggy. So just reading the comments. All right, so do you guys have any more questions? You know, if I missed anything. Jennifer says she remembers having 3 keys, driving her grandmother's Oldsmobile, one to enter the car, one to start the car, and one to open the trunk. I remember that. No, I don't remember your grandmother's car, but I do remember that's how it was. Yeah. Go ahead, James. Educate us. What do you got? Yes, I've spent a lot of time in the tech stream forums. It doesn't give a clear answer. So it also doesn't give the answer that you think with the conspiracy either. So when was this 30? You know, when was this? Listen, this is the best evidence because it adds up when you match the known activity. You match the vehicle data, James, which shows there were 2 events. So you have the 3-point turn, which we know from John's Waze data that Karen made on Cedar Crest because she missed a turn. Okay, so that's lock solid in data from both. One of it comes from Karen's vehicle data, and the other comes from John's phone, the Waze data, and also his GPS. All right, so you have the 3-point turn. We know what time she first missed the turn onto Fairview. I believe it was 12:23 and 48 seconds. I'm going on memory now, so I'm not 100% sure, but it's something close to that. And then we know what time that she arrived back at Fairview and made the turn because Waze is calculating all this stuff. And when she got back to Fairview, that was 12:24 and 18 seconds. Now, we know in the vehicle data, it shows a second triggering event. This is the one when she drove recklessly backwards with the accelerator pressed down 75%. And based on the time that she went backwards, they calculate that she went 62 feet. That was 8 minutes and 9 seconds after the 3-point turn. Now, if the 3-point turn is somewhere in the middle between when she first missed the turn onto Fairview and when she came around and did take the turn, that puts it very close to exactly 12:24. So it could be 5 seconds before that or 5 seconds after that. So it's really 12:20. Actually, if you put it dead center in the middle, it was 12:24 in 2 seconds. That's when she made the 3-point turn. So it was 5 or 6 or 7 seconds before that, or 5 or 6 or 7 seconds after that. Let's call it plus or minus 5 to be short. So 12:24 and 2 seconds plus or minus 5 seconds. That's when she made the 3-point turn. 8 minutes and 9 seconds after that, that's when the next event is triggered. And it's in the middle of that event that she strikes John. Now, 8 minutes and 9 seconds after 12:24 and 2 seconds, that adds up to 12:32 and 11 seconds. So 12:32 and 11 seconds, that's 5 seconds before John last moved. So it matches up perfectly. You can't just ignore that, James. I don't want to hear what about butt dials. I don't want to hear it because it matches up perfectly, and you have to explain that. All right. So while we can't be sure at this point, we ourselves in the public can't be sure at this point why those 3 trips were combined into one key cycle. We're giving you a very reasonable explanation for it. And I have seen on the Toyota TechStream forum that there are different reasons that key cycles can look like they're missing. There's different reasons for it. So if you've actually gone there, you've seen it too. Okay, you've seen it, you know. But what is the specific reason here in this case that something can look like it's missing? And this would be it, because they were combined into those 3 things, which is essentially what Trooper Paul testified. But that question would be more legitimate if we didn't know how well it matched up with John's data, the phone data. Now, Trooper Paul didn't know that. So he had his own reasons for believing that it all happened. But we can look at that. We can look at that and say, wow, it really matches up. It correlates so perfectly to within like 5 seconds that there's no other reasonable explanation for it. There's no other reasonable explanation than that Karen struck John sometime around 12:32 and 9, 10 seconds, 11 seconds, sometime around there. Plus, it could have been 5, 6 seconds before that, maybe a couple seconds after that. But it matches up perfectly. Perfectly. So that's the answer. So yes, James, I apologize if we mixed up someone else. People sometimes have conversations in chat. Well, I don't need the sun. I'm not listening to anything now. People have conversations in chat, which is different than leaving a question for me. So sometimes I look at something and I think you're addressing a question to me or saying something to me, when in reality you're just continuing a conversation in chat. But in any case, I've explained it. So is that by itself a 100% certainty explanation? No, it's more like a 98.5% certainty explanation. But that's when you can also start piling on the other evidence, such as the microscopic taillight pieces found in John's clothing, such as the DNA of John found on the housing, such as the human hair, such as the spray pattern that is consistent, and the missing shoe. All of that is consistent with that taillight being struck at that location. So all that combined with the implausibility or the near impossibility of planting evidence because of the way it was found. So it's in the quantum physics world, there's no such thing as mathematical certainty. So for instance, what is the probability that I could walk through that wall behind me? What's the probability? In realistic terms, it's 0. But in the world of quantum physics, it's not 0. There is a mathematical chance that can be calculated by scientists that I could actually walk through that wall. Now, it's going to be something weird, like 1 in 3.4 trillion, right? So it may not be quite that bad here, but within the probability that John went in that house, even though the GPS didn't show it, was attacked by a dog, even though there's no canine DNA on his clothing, was implausibly carried out to die on top of the lawn. At the same time, all the evidence was planted, even though there was really no access to Karen's vehicle and no time to do it before the CERT team was there, and everybody stayed silent. There's just so many things that it's not reasonable when you know all this stuff. And if you have a reasonable intelligence level, you don't need to be Albert Einstein. If you have a reasonable intelligence level and you're just honestly looking at the data, it's not reasonable to conclude anything other than that Karen did this. It's just not. So So thank you for the contributors again. Frank, as always, Slavish Love, Tom Fleming, and Nicole Joyce, a new member. Thank you guys. So I think it's time to call it a night. And the Team USA today, that was a very, if you like basketball, that was a fun game to watch. It really was. The Team USA. I mean, it was LeBron was pretty sick. I know people have different feelings about LeBron, but LeBron was one sick dude today. A 39-year-old guy. You got to root for an old timer like that. Was just physically dominant, and Kevin Durant came off the bench and threw 7 daggers. I think it was 7 3-pointers. He didn't miss any. He hit like 4 in a row early in the second quarter and really turned it around for Team USA. But interesting game to watch. Derek White from the Celtics was scrappy and making plays. Drew Holiday from the Celtics was playing well. Bam Adebayo from Miami had a pretty good fourth quarter. Anthony Davis was quiet for much of the game, but then LeBron got him going, and he made some big plays. And Steph Curry hit some threes as usual and stuff like that. So it was a very interesting game. Next up, they play Southern Sudan, which almost beat them in an exhibition game a couple of weeks ago. So worth watching. But go Team USA. I don't watch these things with the same interest as I did when I was younger. And there was this thing called the Soviet Union. And so when we had the Cold War, watching the communist bloc countries and their medal count competing with the West and with the United States in particular, that made it much more interesting. So from that perspective, I missed the Soviet Union and only from that perspective. Jay Ray, thanks for letting you be here. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to be here, but I don't know what I missed, but because all right, so Jay Ray is partially believes in the conspiracy. That's okay. We want you to, if you're respectful here and have respectful questions, we'll have a friendly exchange, and we get a lot of that. So she says, I just FYI thought I don't believe all the aspects of the conspiracy theory that you're describing right now, and I'm not in any cult, pink or otherwise. Okay, good. Listen, the thing is, if you care about the truth, that matters. And this is the thing, a lot of what the other content creators don't, because they don't ask any kind of both sides kind of questions. So that's the first thing. But then the second thing is that you have to keep asking questions all the time. And the more weird or unlikely something looks, you have to keep asking questions. And so to me, I've seen this process with people over the last year. And I've been a part of it with a lot of people that message me, sometimes for months. And they're on the Free Care and Read side. But if they're polite, I answer back and I just keep laying out the evidence. And eventually, if they're asking the questions and we're giving them the evidence, they invariably will end up on the same side as us. It's because it's not a matter of us convincing them. It's just a matter of them having the stamina and the perseverance to keep asking the questions. And when they do that, and they ask them to people that are willing to show them the evidence, they'll come to the conclusions the same way we did. It's not anything different. None of us are brain surgeons either. We just asked the questions maybe a little bit longer, or started asking those questions longer ago. Oh, David, grow up. First of all, lie. When someone makes a mistake or has bad information or something like that, that's not a lie. This is how I know that many of the zombies in the horde are simpletons, because they use the word lie for every mistake. So if I tell you that the Red Sox won today and it turns out that they didn't, I didn't lie to you. I got the information wrong. All right. So the second thing is you're talking about that video when I was during the trial. And I said, oh, look, you can see that the taillight is that you can see the missing pieces. That's a mistake. And I'm doing a live show. I streamed every single hearing. I mean, every single day of the trial. It was exhausting. And yes, so listen, my eyes, it wasn't a mistake. All right. So I was making it up. All right. Of course it was a mistake. Oh, I'm sorry. So you think I'm part of the McAlberts, right? Maybe I'm part of the conspiracy. I'm part of the conspiracy, guys. The vast Soros-led conspiracy. I've got a special seat on the bus when they set off the bombs that are going to destroy most of the world. I'm going to get out. They have a space for me on the island. Right, David? Is that what you think? It's so crazy. It's a mistake in the moment. So yes, your eyes make a mistake when you have expectations of something as it's coming in. But that's why you correct it. It works both ways, David. All right. So since you're in here commenting sometimes, maybe you've noticed, maybe you didn't. But when they first, this was during the trial, when they first showed Karen Reed's taillight, remember the dash cam video from 8/22. So when they first showed that video in court, I was watching and I made the mistake of saying, I don't see any missing pieces. What is going on here? I don't see any missing pieces. I said that. That's at the 8/22 dash cam video. And people in chat were like, no, right there. Look. And somebody actually even, I think, took a screenshot and drew a little red circle around it and sent it to me while I was on the air. And then when I looked at it, because that dash cam video was a little bit different, I realized that what I was looking at, and the taillight was partially covered in snow. When I was looking at it, I wasn't even actually looking at the taillight. I was looking at the part above it. And so I didn't see the broken pieces. But then once it was pointed out to me, I was able to see it. So I react honestly. And that includes if it's not what I'm expecting to see. So in that case, I was expecting to see missing taillight pieces, didn't initially see them. And I reacted honestly by saying, where are the missing pieces? I said that live with over 1,000 people. Probably about 700 or 800 people watching. You can go back and see it. I didn't delete it. It's still there. So nobody in the zombie horde wants to make copies of that. But I said that. Another example was in one of the last pretrial hearings when Adam Lally said that there was audio from body cam audio from Yuri Buchanan when they arrested Karen the second time. And so that was in the police station when they were booking her. And he said, Adam Lally described Karen's statement as saying something to the effect, oh yeah, you guys know that Brian and Colin smashed John's head on the taillight. That's what Adam Lally described it as. And then about an hour and a half later, they played the audio in court. And that's not what she said. She said Colin and Brian smashed John's head. And then she said my taillight was smashed. She had separated them. So I called that deceptive by Lally. And people got mad at me. But I called it deceptive. Now, I think more realistically, Lally just made a mistake because all reports are from people that, whatever their opinions are of Lally as a lawyer, everybody considers this guy to be truly one of the more incorruptible lawyers around. I've talked to other prosecutors and defense lawyers, people that know him. Everybody thinks he's incorruptible. So it's not that he lied. It's that he didn't quite have that right. Maybe he did lie. I don't know. But the bottom line is he didn't describe it accurately. But I did honestly tell you, David, tell the audience that, yes, that was deceptive is the way I called it. I said that was Lally's deception. So I try to call it the way I see it. And there's no lying in that. You just call it the way you see it, and you hope you get it right. And when you make a mistake, you correct it. It's that simple. It's not that complicated, Dave. Not that complicated, dude. Again, but I could do this as I've asked you before. Do you ask any questions? Do you have an innocent explanation, David, as to why Karen called Kerry Roberts and said John's dead, and then called back and said maybe he was hit by a plow? Now you can say, well, maybe she didn't say that, right? Maybe Kerry Roberts is lying. No. Not only did the defense not challenge that, but the records show that right after that call, Kerry Roberts called the police and then called the hospital to see if they had found anybody hit by a plow. So she's not lying. So that means Karen absolutely said that to her. And there is no innocent explanation. Go ahead, David. I always answer you questions. I always answer your questions. You answer right now. What is the innocent explanation for Karen thinking that John's dead at 5 a.m. and thinking he was hit by a plow? What's the innocent explanation for that? There is none. So you can't. There's no innocent explanation for that. I don't know what it meant or whether Karen was saying I hit him at the scene, because there's not a recording of it. So I never have weighed that heavily. But what she said to Kerry Roberts, I weigh that very heavily. Why was she calling her parents so many times that morning? I'm talking about before 5 a.m. No. You don't get to do that, David. You don't get to do that. I just explained to you why that's the truth. Kerry Roberts not only testified to that, but they got the records that right after Karen hung up and Kerry hung up, Kerry Roberts called the police and then the hospital to ask if somebody had been hit by a plow. So no. You can't play with me, dude. You're not smart enough. I already explained it. I knew you were going to say that. I already explained it. I'm one step ahead of you. Always. Never forget that. You're not smart enough. And if that doesn't seem nice, all right. I don't care. Time for me to get some ice cream. All right. Good night, guys.